Welcome to Farm Charm Chic. I'm Emily. Today's episode is a mega video full of 50 DIYs to try for summer that are each less than $5. So let's get those creative juices flowing, beautify our space for the hot months we have ahead of us, and let's do it on a budget. If you like creating of any sorts, I would love if you would consider subscribing to my channel. Remember to hit that thumbs up when you see a project that you like, but let's get right into these DIYs. I love the look of this little frosted glass lantern from Kirkland's and thought I could easily recreate something similar with this glass little jar that I found at Dollar Tree. Now this does have this little twine around the top of it, and so I'm going to leave that rather than try to find anything since it's all kind of like a one-stop shop thing with this, if that makes sense. So I'm just using my little heat tool to remove that sticker from the bottom, and then I'm just going to wipe it off and get it all cleaned up. I will also take this little twine off now because I'm going to frost the glass on this little lantern. I will be replacing that once this process is done. So there is a little bit of glue on the sides of the lip of the jar there, so I just use my heat tool to get that completely cleaned off so that way the glass is completely clean. To frost this, I'm just using this Rust-Oleum frosted glass spray. I have never used this before, so this was the first time, and I absolutely love the process. I just took this out into my little spray paint studio in my garage. It's just a giant box that I have so it doesn't get all over everything. And I just give this about 3 really light coats. I just go in just a typical spray paint motion, just little small bursts, stay about 12 inches away. Let it thoroughly dry in between each layer. This is so satiny. The finish is so beautiful. It is so smooth, and I love how this turns out. This is definitely a hit, and I will be using this frosted glass from Rust-Oleum much more often. This is not sponsored or anything by them. I just ended up really liking this product. So I'm just going to replace this little twine back on here, and I am going to have that little handle, get that put into place as well. So I just use a little bit of glue. That's how it was originally affixed to the jar. So after I kind of get all of my measurements down here, I don't really measure anything. You guys know that. I just kind of eyeball it, and then I'm just going to hot glue where I want the pieces to be, and then I will be able to have that little handle to hang my lantern from. After I have glued into place where my little handle is, I'm just going to wrap around the rest of that twine, and I will just kind of tuck the pieces under and glue that. You can kind of watch how I do that here if you decide to recreate this. Now, if you want to go for the same vibe and you don't want to spray paint it, you could easily just go look for this lantern at Dollar Tree. It would be super cute. Of course, I found that on Kirkland's, and then I saw this at Dollar Tree and thought, oh my gosh, this is the perfect opportunity to try and frost glass since I've never actually done that. And I just love how it turns out. But you can kind of see I'm just going to tuck that back under. Now I could have easily gone and thought of something else to do to make more of a wood type of handle on this, but I thought it was just easier to do it this way, and I got the same feel and the same look from this. So now I'm just going to take a couple of these little tea lights. These also came from Dollar Tree. You just pull the little tab out and they light up, and I end up putting 2 of them in there to add a little bit more light. Here's a quick look at our inspiration piece that was from Kirkland's, and then here is the piece that I recreated. I really think this turned out great. You're going to get that same feel and that same vibe from this lantern. I love how that frosted spray paint turned out, and this really was just a couple of dollars, which is a fraction of the price from the original Kirkland's version. What do you guys think of this? Do you like how it turned out? Would you try that frosted glass after seeing this? I loved how it turned out. This piece is really simple, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time to create, and it's really, really pretty. And I just have these pieces from Dollar Tree. So I'm showing you 5 pieces here. If you want to make a base out of like this leftover piece right here, that's totally optional. I just wanted to keep this under that $5 price point. And now that it's $1.25, not $1, we're working with 4 items, not 5. So I have 2 of the square pieces and 2 of the like picket fence or house looking pieces. These came from the crafter square section at Dollar Tree. They have them in this finish, and there's also like a white finish. You can also paint it to be any color that you would like. I'm going to leave mine this natural color today. Now I'm just taking my heat tool to help heat up the adhesive on the back of these price stickers that are on here, the little barcode stickers. It's just an easy way to remove these, to use like your little putty knife there or your fingernail and get under there, and then just be careful not to burn your fingers, because I've done that a time or two. And so, but you're just heating that up and it just peels right off, and it leaves very minimal adhesive on there. If it does leave a little bit of the adhesive, or you just want to kind of blend that in a little bit more, just run a little emery board over it, or sanding, some sandpaper to kind of help get that off and remove that. And it just kind of helps it so there's no residue left behind. Now I'm taking the two, we're just going to call them a house piece, even though they're kind of like a picket fence, or I think they're supposed to be kind of like a house, but we're taking the two house pieces and we're going to place them against the side pieces here. You want your side pieces to be on the outside. See how I slip this piece on the inside there? Because you don't want any rough edges to show when you're looking at this head on, if you're looking at it from a house facing you. Now I'm just using some E6000 glue. I feel like this works a little bit better than hot glue, but like some Gorilla Glue would work great. Some of the Dollar Tree super glue would work great. I just like the gel consistency of the E6000 here to make sure that I'm getting a good bond, but any type of like adhesive that you're used to using. So I put that on all three sides, and then I'm just going to set that off to the side there, and then put some glue on my other one so I can work fairly quickly once I have this done. This is why I don't think hot glue would work the best, because I feel like it would break down over time, and I feel like sometimes if it dries a little bit, it gets a little clumpy, and I don't want that happening with this. I want this to look as clean and precise as I can. Now I'm just going to, now I realized here quickly that I'd place the outside of this piece on the inside. So when you're doing this and putting it together, just make sure you have all of the outside pieces that have that kind of planked wood look on the outside. And you can do this with any wood pieces. I mean, say you had like a couple pieces of picket fence or some scrap wood in your garage, you could definitely cut these down and make this. You wouldn't have to use anything from Dollar Tree. If you already had some scrap wood, it would be a free project for you to make. So I'm just fitting these together very nicely here, making sure that I line all of the edges up. You do have a little bit of movement with that E6000 that you can kind of scoot any of the pieces around as you need. Now I love these clamps. These are some of my favorite clamps. I have them in a couple of different sizes, and it really helps to get that pressure and leave that on until that E6000 dries. And then this is going to be a pretty permanent fixture here. So I'm just going to line the sides up on this side now, and I'm going to place another one of these clamps. And I'm just making sure that the sides line up the best, because I want this to look, I mean, if you decide you're going to sell these or anything like that, you definitely want the most professional look. So just take your time and make sure that everything looks really nice and clean there. And so then I just squeeze this other set of clamps on here, and I leave this overnight to dry. And you can kind of see here, I need to kind of scoot that in a little bit more, push it down, make sure that's got a really even, you have a little bit, like I said, with that E6000, a little bit of movement to do that. And then these clamps just squeeze on here to have that really nice firm tight. And again, I just leave this overnight, give it one last little squeeze there so it can dry completely. So the next day I come back and I'm going to remove these clamps, and there's a little trigger on them that you just kind of pull, and that releases the tension. They're very easily to operate, and then they just slide off. I just pick these up like at Home Depot or Lowe's. You can order them on Amazon. They're pretty easy to find at any type of home decor store, or not home decor store, but home improvement store. Now, just showing you how sturdy this box is, it is not going anywhere. That E6000 worked great to give this the bond that it needed. I'm going to go over this with a little bit of a fingernail file. You guys know me, you know I love to distress things. So whether you paint this or whether you distress it, leave it as it is. Anyway, it's going to be beautiful. This has a little bit of grooves in it to kind of have it look like planks of wood. So it really does kind of help those pop when you sand around them. You can kind of see, I'll show you. I just think it looks really nice and kind of has a good rustic touch. If you were to sell these, you could do several different finishes, see which sold best for you. But I'll just repeat that same process around the entire piece. Now I'm just going to stick any plant that you've got at home, or any type of greenery or anything like that. This is just like a little planter box for you. And so it's going to be really cute and really nice. However, I have this piece of rope. I had some extra rope lying around from another project. I'm just going to spray it with some water and kind of pull it taut and then let it dry flat so I can get that little kink that was in there out of it. Now, you don't have to do the rope. This is totally optional. Don't go out and buy it. It's going to take you over that $5 budget. But if you happen to have some laying around your house or in your garage or something, you just need maybe like not even quite a foot, like 10 inches maybe of it. And I just tied it in a knot on either end. I'm going to place this in here and glue it down with some hot glue, and I'm going to glue it onto either side on the inside. And then to have this hold in place until that glue dries, I just use a couple of my little Dollar Tree clamps. I love these things. Do you guys use these in your crafting? They come in a couple different sizes, and I feel like I use them all the time. But that's just going to help that rope stay in place and get a good bond there. Now, you're not going to be carrying this by the rope. However, if you were to sell this, somebody might think like, oh, I can carry this by the rope, and you don't want it coming off. The glue does give a really good bond, but I do go in with my staple gun and I just give it a staple on each side. Just make sure your staples are deep enough to go through the rope and the wood there. You could even, look how cute this looks with the plant in there. You could even drill like a hole, like on either side, like right here, you could drill a hole on either side and have the rope come through and tie on the knot on the outside or the inside. That would be really cute. But look at how beautiful this is. It was a very simple project. It did not take much time at all. And I think for the impact and the size of this piece, for being less than $5, is great. And of course, if you were to sell these, you wouldn't have to put a plant in them. You could display it with a plant and show, because a lot of us, especially crafters, have a lot of greenery laying around our house that you could just stick in here. But for different seasons to tuck into on a shelf, I think this is just beautiful. What do you guys think of this piece? Do you like this one? I'm going to use a Dollar Tree cutting board and this little cute floral stake to make this project. So you can see how easy it is to take this little stake portion off of this little sign. I want to weather the cutting board a little bit. You could just place it down like that and it would be completely fine and make this project much easier. But I wanted a little bit like this sign had been left out, it had been weathered, looked like beech wood or something like that. So using a chip brush and a little bit of just white chalk paint, I'll dip my brush in the white chalk paint and then I lightly brush it over the surface of this cutting board. I do go around the sides. I don't worry about the back because it's going to be a sign hanging on a wall or something, so you're not going to see that. So that's up to you whether you do that or not. And I just keep going until I get the desired weathered look. You could easily paint this any color, use any piece of scrap wood that you had. I mean, make this as easy as possible. To give this a little bit more of a three-dimensional look and kind of make it pop a little bit against that sign, I do just go around the edges with a little bit of the white paint on that chip brush, just lightly going over the edges. This would be completely optional, and all of this painting portion actually would be completely optional for you. Now, to get the sign onto our cutting board, I want it to pop with a 3D effect, so I'm using some Jenga blocks on the back. I first place these two down and then I place it onto my sign and realize it's kind of drooping on the one side, so I just take one more Jenga block and glue it on. So those Jenga blocks are glued onto the back of my tin piece, and so all I have to do is just put glue right onto those blocks and then place it down on my cutting board. I love the little red, white, and blue vibe that this has. It really has that Americana, summertime, 4th of July feel to it. I just love those colors. Very coastal to me. So I take some of this rope from the coastal section at Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to use my staple gun and staple a cute little hanger onto the back, so that way this sign can be a cute little hanging sign. So you can see how cute it looks here hanging. I love how this turns out. It's darling, you guys. I just love this one. And you can see even if you just placed it up, it looks like you've got just a little bit of nautical rope on the top of it. So I found this particular sign at Hobby Lobby in their clearance. You can see it was $3 and change that I paid for it there. Now, if you don't have something like this, you can use these little squares right here from Dollar Tree and any type of sign back that you want to glue this to, one's from Dollar Tree or anything. Or if you find just a cute texture on a sign, just pick up a pack of those squares from Dollar Tree and you can recreate this really easily. So if you blink, you'll miss this craft because it is so simple and so easy. I got this free printable online. I'll leave a link to it down in my description box so you can find it. I believe I had to enter my email address into the website, so just know that you have to do that. And then they email you a password and you have access to their whole library of free printables. But I thought this little watercolor flag was absolutely beautiful. And I love the watercolor designs. So I printed it out on cardstock just using regular inkjet printer, and I'm setting it down here. This is cardstock, and so I'm just kind of running my finger over the edges so I kind of know how big that square is. I wanted this to have a very tattered look, so I will end up tearing the edges on this, but you can easily use a paper cutter, give it more of a crisp look. I mean, make it your own when you make it.
In fact, if you guys are taking some of the items that I make and you're wanting to do them in different colors, or you're telling me like, oh, if it was me doing this, I would have done this instead. I love that you guys are thinking like that, because it just means that your creative juices are flowing and you're thinking of how you can make things tailored to your style or your design aesthetic. And I love that because it just means you're thinking like a creator. And so if you want to copy things exactly how I do them, go right ahead, but it will definitely get those creative juices. But when you're looking at things going, I think I'd rather do this instead, or I like this color, or I wouldn't do that, that just means that you're thinking like a creator. So I absolutely love that. And I love hearing all of your different ideas. So after I tear all of the edges there, I take some antiquing wax on a brush and I just go around the edges. I wanted to give this an aged look here. Again, this is something that is a matter of personal preference. And I'm just going around, you can see very clearly on each of the edges there. And then I do it on the underneath piece of this wood. So that way the pieces of the wood that peek through will also have that aged look. And then you guys, you guessed it, I'm going to use my favorite school glue. This purple glue stick from Elmer's is like my favorite stuff in the whole world to use instead of Mod Podge when I'm gluing things down, because I don't get any bubbles, I don't get any wrinkling. I have never had an issue with it coming up. This particular brand of glue. Now, I have used other brands of glue that I have not been happy with, but I have not once had an issue with this. So I make sure all of the edges are covered. I put a little bit on the surface as well. And then I straighten this out. Once I get it on here, you do have a little bit of time to kind of manipulate it into the area or design that you want, or not design, but to get it as straight as you want. I realized it wasn't quite as straight. And then I do always get my brayer out and I roll it over. That helps get those two pieces bonded together. You can see right here, there was a few pieces of the ripped paper that were sticking over the edge I didn't like. So I just went ahead and ripped them off. Super easy there. And then this is just the rest of the antiquing wax that was in my little brush there. I'm going over the top of it to kind of give it that aged look there, kind of a little bit more so it's not as stark. Again, that's a matter of personal preference, but here's the brayer, I'm going over the top of it to make sure both directions that it's really bonded. I did take some of this Mod Podge right here and I just went over the top of it to give it a seal, get it sealed, so that way it's waterproof. If I decide to put this on my porch or anything, or if you decide to sell this or anything, it does give it that professional look and it does make that paper protected. But what do you guys think? Do you like this? I love the look of that shiplap with this flag. I think it's beautiful and it's perfect for summertime and any type of Americana look that you're going for. I have seen these darling honey jars that are kind of this white finish with kind of a rustic look to them. You can see here they have this embossed detail, and I really wanted to create something of my own like this. And I have this darling honey jar. This was a gift from a good friend of mine. Thank you, Rachel. And she gave it to me for my birthday last year, and it was filled with local honey, which of course was delicious, but very soon gone because we love to eat honey and love to use that as a sweetener in our home. And it had this darling embossing on it, and I thought this would be perfect to kind of dupe those other honey jars and use this to do that. My friend was so sweet when she gave this to me. She said she picked this jar out specifically because she knew I would do some fun DIY with it. So I totally have her permission to paint over this jar. Now, I just put some white chalk paint over this. This is just folk art white chalk paint, and I gave it 2 or 3 good coats. You can put a layer of Mod Podge down if you want, but if you're doing that many coats, it's not really necessary. Now, I'm just taking my emery board to go over that raised detail. I'm starting out very lightly. I like using the emery board because you can use like the little end pieces of it to get in those really small nooks and crannies and do the really detailed area there to make that contrast. And I really just love how this contrast ends up looking on this. Now, I've since learned that these type of honey jars are called, and I'm probably going to butcher how you say this, but a muth jar. It's spelled M-U-T-H. I had no idea. We kept bees for a couple of years and we had never used any jars like this. We always just used mason jars. So I really love the vintage feel on these jars, and it looked so beautiful with the honey in it. But I'm going to be absolutely honest with you, it was like the most impractical way to like actually use honey on a daily basis. It was actually kind of hard. It was to get it out of here because the opening was so small that you couldn't really stick a knife down in there easy to get it out. It wasn't like a squeeze jar. With my mason jars, the openings are really wide. So I was very happy to kind of redo this and have it just be a decorative piece. Now, as you can see here, I'm looking at this on that neck of that jar with the space where that cork is. There was a little bit of a space there, and I thought I would try this buffalo check ribbon. Now, I didn't actually love the look of that because it wasn't kind of the feel I was going for. I do love the classic buffalo check with the bee theme. I think is very cute and very a very cute look. But I wanted something a little more like dainty or cottagecore. So I have this lace ribbon from Hobby Lobby, and it is from the wedding section, but it has an adhesive back. And so it is so easy to use. And I'm just putting that around here, and I'll just cut it off to size, and you don't have to glue it down or anything. It's very easy to remove if I decide I don't like it there. But I really think this looks so cute. And then also the jar has like this little arch detail, as you see, all around the different edges. I also distressed each of the edges to kind of give it all that worn look. And I just thought that made it so you could see all of those letters so much better on there, the contrast. I put a little twine and a little twine bow. It's just a matter of personal preference how you embellish this, but I'm really pleased with how this comes out. It's going to be the perfect little decor piece for a bee vignette here. I love the detail on the jar and how that came out with that little bit of distressing. Do you guys think this came out really well? Would you use this in your bee decor?
I found this cute little soda carrying case for $2 when I was thrifting at my last little thrifting adventure. It has this little bottle opener on the side. When I saw it, I knew immediately what I wanted to do with it. So I'm just going to take the bottle opener off here and just leave this without it. Now, when I was making this video, this random like strawberry appeared on my table, and I had to go back and watch the footage. And you can see my son throwing it in there. He denied it until I showed him that footage. And then he was like, okay, fine, I was caught red-handed. I don't know. I thought I would leave it in there because it was just kind of fun. Now, I just am grabbing some of my stencils that I have here. I wanted this to say fresh herbs, and I have this little sign that had the word fresh already on it, and so I thought it would be kind of fun to utilize what I had there. And then I'll use those Dollar Tree letters you can see down in the left-hand corner there. I'll use those to put the herbs word on that bottom little slat of my little carrying case here. I really wanted this to be kind of an organic, fresh looking little carton that you would maybe cut fresh herbs from your garden or something and place them in there while you were carrying them. And so that was kind of the vibe that I was going for with this. Now I'm just using one of those little foam circular tools that you pick up at Dollar Tree to do my stenciling here. You can see how well that works. You just want to make sure when you're doing your stencils that you don't oversaturate your tool with paint. Otherwise, you're going to end up with some seepage underneath your stencils. Now, this did not have to be perfect because I will be kind of distressing and sanding this down so it looks like it's faded and has been used through many, many trips to your garden to pick your fresh herbs. Now, when I was doing the word herbs, I decided to start with the middle letter and kind of line it up with the word fresh there. And so I started with my R and then just kind of went on either side of that. I'm sure there's lots of different ways for you to center things or do things. Again, it didn't have to be perfect in my eyes, but I think I did a pretty good job of centering it all here. But just the same process with each of the letters here to get that stencil done. To distress this a little bit, I'm just doing a little bit of dry brushing with some white paint here. I will go and sand this so it won't look quite like so janky or anything. And I do take my fingernail file and I'm just filing all the edges here. And I do go over the words and the letters that I stenciled on there. I just wanted this to look like it was pretty aged and just kind of faded, barely there that you can see those words on there. I pay attention to all of the edges because I will go around with some antiquing wax as well. You can see I'm just putting that on a baby wipe and just kind of going over all of this. What will happen is where you dry brush that white paint, it will kind of pick up that antiquing wax since it's chalk paint, and it will kind of age the paint as well as the edges. I just put a little coconut liner in the base of this, just ripped one apart from Dollar Tree and shoved that in there, and then just took some of the greenery herbs that I had in my stash and shoved in there. Of course, whatever you want to put, if you want this to be a practical thing to place some herbs in, however you want to do that or put something in here, it's just a really cute piece to have to decorate for different seasons. I think this really kind of screams that fresh spring vibe. I just love this, and I think that wood tone and the herbs, the greenery, is going to be a beautiful addition to your decor to kind of freshen it up. What do you guys think of this one?
This project is going to use a couple of your big craft sticks and a couple of your like popsicle size craft sticks. And I apologize, I was going to originally use this little chalkboard thing from Dollar Tree down here, but I end up using something else, and I'll show that to you here in just a second. But I'm just cutting the edges, the round edges off, so I can make popsicles. So the little popsicle size stick will be the actual bottom to the popsicle, the little handle, and then your bigger size craft stick will be the main part of the popsicle. Now this piece of wood here just comes from one of the Dollar Tree signs I had cut down for a prior project. I ended up liking the shape of this a little bit more, and I thought it would be really cute to have 5 of these in the different colors that I'm using all across this little wood cutout here. I decided to paint the back of this white because I thought all those bright colors glued on the front of this would actually look really cute. So I give this several coats of white paint, and then I paint all of my popsicles in the color scheme that I'm choosing, so you can tailor that to your own desire. And then I just use some antiquing wax on the popsicle stick. I thought that kind of added a little bit more contrast. You could easily leave those the same neutral color, which is more authentic, but I really did kind of like the stained look on this just to add a little bit more detail to it and have it pop a little bit more on that white paint. And as you can see, I'm using some hot glue to glue these together. Now I do want to size it up to my sign, so I put it on my sign while that glue is still, I'm able to manipulate that a little bit, and so I can size that popsicle to exactly how I want so it fits on the sign, so I don't get all the way done and not have it fit. And then I just use my first one as a template to glue the rest together. And then I just use some hot glue and space these out how I want them spaced. You can do that however you would like to. I started with the 2 end pieces and then the middle and worked from there. I know a lot of people say, oh, always start with the middle. I have a hard time finding the middle if I start with that one in my experience. So measure them out if you want to. I left this plain. You could easily do some letters on these little popsicles to spell out summer or something like that. I felt where I already had something with the words on it on my tier tray, I didn't need something else. And I kind of like the simplicity of this piece. I thought it turned out really cute. This is just a cutting board from the kitchen section at Dollar Tree. I have a few of these in my stash, and I have yet to do a project with them, so I was kind of excited to get to use one. So you can kind of see that little indentation area in the center there to make that rectangle. I just placed down some Mod Podge, and I'm just taking a napkin. This is from their nautical line at Dollar Tree this year, and I'm just going to gently place that down into the Mod Podge, trying as best as I can to not have there be any wrinkles or anything like that. When working with tissue paper or napkins or anything during the decoupage process, I like to use a little brush with some water in it. Every time I do this, I have someone tell me that there's a specific brush you can buy to have water in it to do this with. I find that just using a brush I already have and dipping it in water works totally fine as well. So use what you have. You don't need to go out and buy anything special to do this with. And then I am just going very close up to the edge there to make sure I can kind of get as clean of a line as I can. And then I'm just going to decoupage over the top of that to seal it all in. I flip it over and I do the exact same thing on the back. However, I learned a new tip or a trick here. I'm just using the back of a pencil, like an eraser, to kind of go through and get that edge there. So I'm just pushing it against the cutting board and pulling it away. I put a little water down first with my brush, as you can see there. That gets it a little bit wet, and then this gets really close up to the line. So there is a tip for you if you're trying to do some detail work like that. It worked much better than my fingernail did. And then of course I'm just going to seal this side in with some Mod Podge also. This cute little nautical ribbon came from Dollar Tree as well, and I'm just using a little bit of hot glue to wrap this around to kind of add a little bit of detail and break up that stark whiteness at the top of the cutting board. So now I have this cute little starfish wood cutout from Dollar Tree. It came in a pack, it's for like a hanging banner, I think, or something, and it came in a pack of 5 or 6 of them. So I just take one of those, I paint it blue, and then using the end of one of my paint brushes, I'm just dipping it into a light color there, and just, it has little indentations for circles already, so I'm just putting it where those little circles already are, and just kind of adding some detail to the starfish to kind of make it look a little cute and a little bit of embellishing. I don't show it, but I do go back in with a white color and do a little bit of a sheen on all of the cute little dots there, and that kind of helps, add a little bit more to it. But you can add as much or as little detail as you would want to something like this. It's just kind of fun sometimes to have a little bit of fun and make it a little bit cutesy. And to give it dimension, I always like to go, if I'm doing a three-dimensional piece like this, I like to go around the edge with a contrasting color, kind of dry brush that edge. And then since this did have a little hole at the top of the starfish where you'd hang it, I just tucked that up underneath that rope, just used some hot glue to glue that on there. Now, of course, this is just for decorative purposes only, but I think it turns out so cute. It would be so cute to have sitting against a backsplash in a kitchen or on a cute shelf in your kitchen. I think it turned out absolutely darling. What do you guys think of it? I absolutely love this project. I think you're going to like this one too. It's super fun and super easy. So I take these 2 squares that are from a pack of 5 or 6 wood squares that you can get at Dollar Tree, and it's 5 or 6 in a pack for $1. And I'm going to paint one of them white and then the other one blue. And I give them each a couple of coats just to make sure that they're completely covered and look really good. And I do front and back on them both. I found these cute little shape puzzles at Dollar Tree and grabbed them specifically to do something for 4th of July because I love those little star shapes. So I'm going to use 3 of those stars, and I'm going to coat both of them, or all 3 of them, not both, there's 3. All 3 of them in white paint. I then tape off 2 stripes on my one white board there, and then paint the negative space red, so that way I'm going to have red and white stripe, if that makes sense. So you can see I'm taking that tape off, so I'm left with some stripes there. If you have watched me ever before, you know I do like to distress things. I distress every single thing almost, and so I do give this really good sanding with my emery board to clear all of those edges off, give them that really roughed up and weathered look. And then I do the same thing with my blue. Give all of the corners some good attention to make this look really weathered. Of course, this is completely optional and personal. This is going in my home, so I'm decorating it how I like to see my things look. So that you can see what I'm going to do with the stars there. Obviously, this is coming together. I found this little ampersand sign at Walmart. I believe 97 cents was what the price was. Could have been $1.97. I'm not 100% sure, guys, but it was less than $2. But I want my stars to match, so I do take some mineral chalk paint and paint each of those stars to give them that weathered look to kind of match that ampersand. And so I'm using some super glue as well as hot glue on that, so that way I can make sure it's going to hold, because this is what's holding everything together. And I do, there we go, I placed that down, and I did glue all those stars down. And I'm just showing you can use some twine to use it like as a door hanger on a wreath, or you can use some Jenga blocks on the back of it to have it stand, or you can just have it like on a tiered tray just to kind of lean up against something. I did take some jute twine and made a cute little twine bow, and there you go, you have stars and stripes. I think this is going to be so cute in my 4th of July decor. Let me know down in the comments if you were to make this, where you would put this. I just love the look of this little pot on Kirkland's website and thought I could try and replicate it. It doesn't look exactly like this one, but I think it turns out pretty good, the same feel. I just got this pot at Dollar Tree, and the one at Kirkland's kind of looked a little bit roughed up, so I'm just taking some white chalk paint with a chip brush, and I'm just doing a very light dry brushing all over this, and I go over the entire pot a couple of times, and I'll do a layer, wait for it to dry, and I'll even do like an up and down motion with the brush as well, like tapping it onto the pot to give a little bit more detail to it. These pots are great from Dollar Tree, and they're actually pretty sturdy. They're all just plastic, as I'm sure that you can tell or that you've guessed, but I really liked the shape of this one because it had kind of that rounder, bulbous like shape to the bottom of it, and I thought it was really kind of gave that same feel that the Kirkland pot gives as well. So here I'm just showing that tapping motion I was talking about earlier. I have such a small amount of paint. It's just what's left on my paint after doing all of the dry brushing. And this just gives a little bit of a different texture to it, helps break up all of the distressing and everything, just something extra. So I'm putting a few Jenga blocks or something in the bottom, and I'm just showing you this is a plant from IKEA, and it fits perfectly in there if you have something little to kind of prop it up. So that's a great alternative to put in there. I also have this little topiary ball that I got at Hobby Lobby. It was from their spring ring line, and so it was 50% off when I bought it, so it was $4. And so I'm just showing you that that works absolutely perfect there. And it was very light with those Jenga blocks in there and that topiary ball, so I just grabbed some rocks I had. You can get those from your yard, or Dollar Tree sells them, any craft store. Stuck those in the bottom, and then I just tucked this little topiary ball down in there. Here's a look at the Kirkland's inspiration, and then here's a look at how mine turned out. It is not exactly the same, I do know that, but it gives the same feel and the same vibe, and I think for a fraction of the cost, it turned out lovely. It's going to be the perfect touch to anywhere in my decor that needs just a little bit of greenery. I thought it would be a lot of fun to take this little crate from Dollar Tree and make it look like a stack of books. I've seen a lot of different crafters try this. I haven't had the chance to do it yet, and I thought with the watermelon theme, this would be the perfect opportunity. So I am just taking the dark green color to paint along the bottom layer for my first layer of the books. For the second layer, I do go in with some white, and I go all the way around on top of that green layer with the white acrylic paint. For the very top layer, I am going to do hot pink acrylic paint, so I do go around the entire layer on the top, and then the very top surface of our little crate, which is going to be our books, I do paint that completely in, and I do have to do a couple coats of the pink on that to make sure that it is all completely covered in the dark color that I want. After I finish that layer of pink, I decide I do not love the white as the middle color. So I go in with a lighter green, and I go all the way around and paint over all of that white with this light green. I feel that this combination of colors is a little bit better. I do cut out with my Cricut a couple of words that say one in a melon, and I do the bottom one, the word melon, in a hot pink color to put on the green. And so I just go ahead and rub all of these and get them on there. And then just kind of working with what I have some pink and green and burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree. So I do go in and wrap the green ribbon all the way around the side of what is becoming my stack of books. And I use a little bit of that burlap ribbon to kind of add a little bit of texture and differentiation between the color right there. And then I am just going to get some little scraps of ribbon. I've never made one of these scrap bows, so this is my first time. You'll have to let me know how I did. I know typically you do use a little bit thinner ribbon, not quite this wide, or more narrow ribbon, I should say, not necessarily thinner. But I feel that this turned out pretty cute. So I do go through and just stack all the scraps together, and then I pinch it together and use a little bit of the burlap ribbon to kind of glue as the middle. And then I do go through and dovetail all of the ends of all of the ribbons. I do just use some hot glue to get that ribbon, that bow, glued right onto the top there. And here is the final product. I think this turned out really cute. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I love that I went in and did the green color that I did in the middle. I think that this color combination looks a lot better than with the white there. So let me know down in the comments if you've had a chance to make one of these yet. I know a lot of people have. I think this turned out so cute, and it was so fun to make. Dollar Tree always has cute little planter buckets, and in their nautical section they had a couple different designs, I believe, and this one has like the little seahorse that's on it, and it's really cute. It's got this cute little rope at the top here. So I'm just going to kind of make this match my colors a little bit. It almost had like a little, like it's galvanized, but it had almost like a little bit of a white wax or something on it to kind of give it a little bit of texture, dimension, kind of scratched off rather easily. So I just heated up that rope. I took that off because I want to place it back on, and I'm just going over with a light blue color. Now I wish I had done maybe a little bit of a darker blue to match the different DIYs that I'm doing, only because I feel like once I go over this with a dry brush that's white, it didn't show up kind of with the contrast that I was hoping, but it's still kind of fun, and this is just to give you an idea that you can change things up to match your own decor. But with that little raised design there, when you dry brush over it with some white paint or whatever contrasting color, it really helps to pop. Now I put the rope back on and I used some cute little jute twine that came from the nautical section that kind of was a blue and natural color together to kind of put in between there. I think this turned out really cute. It does fit like an IKEA sized plant very well if you have some of those. And it's just something to bring a little bit of that beachy feel into your home and have it be really simple that you can change it up to match your decor.
This is a super cute and fun little idea for a riser. Both of these pieces came from Dollar Tree. Now this metal candle base is a little flimsy, so I was just trying to bend it to be as straight as I could. And then I'm using this little scalloped tray that is available in the Crafter's Corner at Dollar Tree. Now using a couple of tumbling tower blocks, I'm going to glue them to the top of our candle holder here, and then we're going to glue this to the wooden tray. Now, I initially was going to paint this all the same color and do kind of a different technique with it. However, as I started painting this, I ended up really liking the gold color with the paint that I was using. So in full disclosure, if I was to do this again, I would paint the wooden piece now before I glued it onto the base. But since I thought I was going to be doing this all the same color, that's why it kind of is the way that it is. So just keep that in mind. I'm using duck egg, vintage duck egg from Dixie Belle. I love this color. It is kind of a bluish eucalyptus. I just love it. I think it is such a fun color, and I feel like it's perfect for spring as well. Now this is when I was deciding I liked the gold color on the base, so it was a little tedious getting the underneath, which you do want to do because you will see the underneath part. To brighten up that gold, I'm using some antique gold rub and buff to go all over this. That's just going to take care of any imperfections. And while I had that, I decided to go along all of the edges on my little tray. And this works out so nice because you get that beautiful scalloped edge. And so it's going to hit that and it's going to highlight that and make it so beautiful. And when the light catches it, it is so pretty. You could also do this with some antiquing wax. You could also sand this if you wanted to have more of a rustic look with it. For some reason, the gold was just hitting me today when I was doing this DIY, and so I just kind of went with it. So if gold is not your thing, you have plenty of options. I even went and rubbed along the surface to kind of give a little bit of a hint of the gold because when the light catches it, it was so pretty. So I just kind of wanted to bring as much of it in as I could to tie the two together. Here it is completely done. This was such an easy project, something that you could do with kids or grandkids even, to have a cute little riser for their nightstand or something. I just think this turned out beautiful, perfect for springtime, or really, this is an everyday piece. This is something that you could use and decorate for all different seasons, but I think it turned out so beautiful. You'll have to let me know your thoughts on this. Do you love risers as much as I do? I like to keep glass jars and vases in my stash. They're really easy to find at the thrift store, or you can pick them up at your craft store. I like to grab them when they go on sale for really cheap because I feel like you can always find uses for them. Now I just used my heat tool to get off the sticker. There was a little bit of residue, so I'm just using some water and just moving that around with my finger to make sure that gets all broken up, and then just wipe it clear with a paper towel, and you can see there's no residue left at all. Now I have this rope in my stash. This just came from Dollar Tree. I think if you had like some nautical rope to use with it as well, anything like that would work. Even twine would work and get the job done. But I'm just going to use this, and I put a little bit of hot glue on the ends, and I just twisted it there when the glue wasn't so hot, so that way I wasn't going to have a problem with any fraying on the rope. Now I'm just picking a starting point here. I'm using some hot glue to adhere that to the glass jar, and I'm just going to be going around in a circular motion with my piece of rope, just making sure that every inch or so I put a little dot of hot glue. And you just repeat this process all the way around. It's super simple. You do want to make sure that you're not using so much hot glue that you have a problem with it spilling out or seeping out of the rope or anything, because you want to keep it as clean as possible. If you had one of those small nosed glue guns, that would be a perfect thing to use on this project here. Unfortunately, I have my trusty old glue gun I've had forever, and I love it and it works. So if it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
So I'm just, as you see here, going around here, just being very careful. I do put the glue on the rope, a little dot, not on the glass. I just wanted to keep it, like I said, as clean as possible. And it's just so simple to do this. This project took maybe 10 or 15 minutes to do from start to finish. If you have one long piece of rope to use, I would suggest doing that so you don't have to go back in with another piece. I just was using a scrap piece and I didn't know exactly how far that would get me. So that's what I started with. And you can see I even ended up bringing out another bundle there because I wasn't sure how far up I wanted to go on the vase. It's just a matter of personal preference when you're doing something like this, what you think looks good. And you can see here, I am just putting those two ends together to try to make it as seamless as possible. Obviously, when I display this, that area is going to go in my back. I did where I started the rope at the very bottom and I ended this layer. I wanted to make sure that those seams were both on the same side. So that way, if I did put this towards like a wall, you would not be able to see that at all. Honestly, it's very seamless though. And so I feel like unless you look really closely, you can't tell. But the same process here, just going around a little bit of glue and then I will go place that rope down. You can see here, I'm putting a little bit more there. And I just come in and I just tap that rope down and I move that rope towards the glass so any hot glue will go towards the glass, not out between your seams. And then any excess there I was just kind of picking off. So as you guys can see, this is easy peasy, really simple. Here's just a close-up look at exactly what that looks like. I don't do an actual like a string or bead of glue. It's just little teeny dots that I will do. And then I will push that rope in towards my vase. After I get the desired amount of layers there that I want, I'm just putting a little bit of hot glue on the end there to seal that so I don't have fraying. I do taper it off at a little bit of an angle. I have measured this so where this seam stops here, it's in line with all of the other areas that I have started new rope lines. So that way, again, they're all on that same side. So when it's placed against a wall, you would not even be able to see those. Again, you have to look pretty close to be able to see it there. And just using some glue, I'm just going to hold that down until it completely dries. And there we have it. I decide to take a little bit of one of these aiming flames and go over to kind of get any of those little hairs or anything like that that comes up from the rope. I really like the finish this gives the rope. Of course, just be careful. Do this outside. Have water close by. Just be very smart when you're using an open flame like this. This is completely optional. But look at how beautiful this is. I think it turns out so elegant, so neutral and simple. I think it is the perfect beachy item. You could even put like a little seashell on the front if you wanted to completely go that nautical look, or just leave it more plain and that way it matches all decor types. What do you guys think of this? Do you like how it turned out? I love a good tag in my decor and it's so fun to make them over. Now these are just several different options. Some are Hobby Lobby clearance, some are Dollar General, some are Dollar Tree. This one was thrifted from my local thrift store and it's actually the one that I'm going to use. I love the shape of it and I just think it's going to be really, really cute. But you have a lot of options when it comes to tags. You can find the shape anywhere. You could even cut your own out. Now mine had this adorable little gnome that was more for like fall or Halloween time on it. I carefully took him off because maybe I can use him in something else, I don't know, but I definitely want to use this little circular like washer shape on it. Now it was pretty grungy, so I had to kind of scrub it and clean it and sand it all down, and I wanted to find a design to put on here. So I have these little labels that I purchased off of Etsy last year. I made my mom some dish towels for her kitchen with them on, and I really thought it would be cute to do one of those. And I found a darling one with some oranges and a cute little bird on there, and I just feel like bringing birds into my spring decor are a way that I can really keep that spring feel. Now I just taped some tissue paper down to a regular piece of printer paper. I put this through my inkjet printer with the design. I had measured it so I knew how big I needed to make it in my software, and I'm just going to cut it down, all of the excess edges off of it. Now I took a little piece of cardstock or just like a little packaging that I cut out to be the exact same shape as my design because I want to put some stamps down, but I don't want the stamps to show behind my design. So I'll kind of show you what I'm doing here. I'm just going to take, you can see my blank square there. This is kind of like a mask or a shield. And I'm just taping it down with some Scotch tape, and I'm going to put some stamped designs around here
So that way when I take off that square piece, it's going to be completely like blank in that area. If that doesn't make any sense, just keep watching. I promise you'll see exactly what I'm doing. So I remove my stamp here, and just be careful when you're using stamps and you have a mask or shield like this that you're making sure to push down really well on the area right around the edge of your mask. That way you can get your stamp design right up to the edge. So I'm using a couple of different bird shapes and a couple of different floral shapes on here. And I just go around, and there's no rhyme or reason to this. I'm just seeing where there's an open space, where it looks good, using like half a little bit of a design on a corner or an edge. I wanted this to almost look like toile or a stencil or something, just kind of a fun little background. These bird stamps came from Dollar Tree, and they're some of my favorite. I absolutely love them. You can see I will use the little stamping block with some of them. Some of them I just do with my hand. Now I wanted this to be a little bit faded because that black ink is a little harsh. So after the ink is completely dry, I just sand a little bit of it with my fingernail file. Now this is just a little finger dauber that I picked up at Hobby Lobby with some antiquing wax. I'm going to go around the edge here. The edge has been sanded, and so it really soaks in this antiquing wax, giving it a little bit of definition. I made sure to do the sides as well because I think eventually I'll put another design on the back of this so it could be a dual purpose DIY, but I just wanted to make sure that from the side angles that you saw, it was all cohesive. Now to get my tissue paper design down, I'm just putting some Mod Podge down in that blank area, and then I will let that completely dry. Now while the Mod Podge is drying, I'm just going to put a little bit of antiquing wax on that little washer. I think that is such a fun element to have. If you don't have like a little wood cutout one like I have, an actual washer I think would be really cute on there. Now I'm going to set my design down over that square that's completely blank because this tissue paper is really thin. So if I had put that stamp all over, it would have really kind of muddled up that design there. So I just wanted to make sure that was totally blank behind that. Now I'm putting some parchment paper over that tissue paper and just using my mini press to reactivate that Mod Podge. And that's going to get your design on there beautifully, no wrinkles or anything. To seal it all in, I'll just go over with a little bit of Mod Podge and just lightly going over, making sure that this is sealing my ink in, as well as covering and sealing in that tissue paper. Just using a little bit of hot glue, I'll go ahead and attach that washer right over the hole. Now I have some thicker twine here. I really like the look of the thicker twine with this thicker chunky tag. I felt like it looked really nice with that. I also thought maybe a couple of beads might look nice on it. So since it was thicker twine, I stuck some needle nose pliers inside of my beads and kind of just pounded them a little bit. That way I could make sure that I had an opening big enough that I could fit that twine through there. And I did have to use my pliers to kind of pull it through. It took a little bit of time to get this, but I really think it was worth it. I think those beads really do make this look so cute. It's the little touches that make things look so nice and upscaled. Now I'm just tying a knot in the top here, making sure that it's really tight, and then I'll just cut my edges down. I always take my fingernail and kind of break apart those edges so it doesn't look so crisp and clean. It looks like it's been around for a minute or two. Here's the tag all complete. I think this is such a perfect piece of decor. I think it is very springtime, but it is also something that could stay out all year long. But I really feel like on a tiered tray or on a shelf as a shelf sitter would be so cute and such a fun piece of decor. Even making items like this to sell, I think these would be good sellers. I just really think this turned out so pretty and elegant. What do you guys think of this? Did you guys like how it turned out? You'll have to let me know down in the comments if you like decorating with tags or not. I think they're so fun and such a little versatility that you have to make them for different seasons and different times. I just really love them.
I keep seeing these cute little, almost like cabanas or little storefronts for tiered trays, and so I thought I would have a go at making my own. So I'm just taking several craft sticks here, and then I'm painting them. I'm going to do every other one a different color, so it looks kind of cute, kind of like a little ice cream shop is the vibe I'm going for here. And so I am just painting each of them white, several of them, and then blue, and then alternating the colors as you can see here. And then I'm just using the bigger popsicle sticks to glue onto the back of this, so that's what's going to hold them all together. And so you can see my stick is not quite long enough to reach the side, so when I glue my second one on, I start with the opposite end, and that way they're all glued together. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here and that makes sense to you. I am going to take some of these. These are the bigger wooden dowels, so not barbecue skewers, but wooden dowels. And I'm just going to use this as like the dog nail trimming tool. I've seen several people do this, and I've used this a few times to cut these, and it works pretty well. So if you don't have any miter shears or anything, or you see these at Dollar Tree, you could pick one up specifically for this, and it actually works quite well. So I'm just going to trim this little dowel in half. And I just want them to be equal sizes because I'm going to use this to put our top on, the little umbrella part of our little stand here. So I just kind of am playing around to see exactly what angle I want the top to be at, where I'm going to end up gluing these to the crate that I have there. And then after I kind of decide the angle, then I'm going to glue these onto the umbrella part. We're just going to call this an umbrella just for the sake of making things easy. I guess it could be a canopy too, so whichever. Anyway, I'm just going to use a lot of hot glue on here. And at first I was kind of holding this, and then I realized that I needed to rest it on something because this is going to take a little while to dry. So I got the correct angle that I wanted, and then I just placed that crate underneath both sides and glued both sides. I walked away and let this sit for 20 minutes or so. Just let that glue harden because you do want that angle on there, and you want it to make sure that it dries completely before you start messing around with it. Otherwise, it'll all fall apart. So I just decide where I want to glue this into the crate, and you can paint this crate, you can stain this crate, however you want to do that for your cute little stand. And then you can see there just where I place the hot glue up the sides, and then I'll just stick those dowels in, and then I will hold those dowels in place until they dry, so that does take a little bit. Now I went ahead and painted a little wood round chip that I had here, and I had some stickers from the stickers I showed you earlier that said something about ice cream on here, and I thought this was super cute, and so I went ahead, cake and ice cream I think is what it says, and then yes it does, okay. And then I put this on here and thought that was cute, but I mean you could easily handwrite something, you could do, I just felt the front needed a little something, but this is how cute this looks. I just stuck a couple of little plants in there to bring some greenery into my tiered tray. I think this turned out so darling, and it's going to be so cute. I decided right here that I'm going to put this as the topper on my tiered tray. So stay tuned so you can see what it all looks like together.
I really loved the look of these cute bee canisters, and I actually had a little canister that I thought would be perfect to try and create something very similar, kind of come up with my own dupe here. This is just a little tin from Hobby Lobby. I got it at one of their clearance sales last year, so I'm not sure. They usually have something like this. What it says on it, I don't know, but I think I only paid like 89 cents or something for them. And it had a cute little coffee label on there, but I just used my little emery board and it filed right off. I mean, like, I thought I was gonna have to repaint this or do all sorts of things, but that just sanded off so easily. And I have these darling napkins. I got these at Home Goods this year, so they may still have them, and it had these darling vintage bee designs on here. And I thought they were so cute, and I loved like the little feel to this, kind of that French country almost feel, with the little Paris thing there. I've used these on a lot of different DIYs. I love the decoupaging process. So I'm just using some water on a little brush to go around the outline of the part of the design I want. And then I'm just going to lightly tear that out so it gives it kind of a nice rough a nice rough. That's kind of an oxymoron, huh? A nice rough edge though, like kind of not so crisp, so it kind of goes on with a really good look here. Now when you do decoupage, you want to make sure that you remove the back portion of the napkin because there'll be 2-ply napkins, so you're just working with that thin front portion of the napkin. And then I'm just using some Mod Podge, and I'm using the matte. I've used matte, I've used satin, I've used gloss. It just depends on the finish. It really isn't going to matter too much though. So I'm just doing a thin coat on my canister where I want that design to be, and I'll spread that out. Now there's several different ways to Mod Podge. This is what I have had success with, and so it's still wet and kind of tacky when I put this on, and I lay my design down and I work from the center with my finger, just lightly pressing that design down, smoothing out any bubbles or any wrinkles. I've seen some people use like cling or plastic wrap to do this process. I still have yet to try that, but I can see the benefits it might have. But you just want to be very delicate going around the designs here. And I just worked from the center out. And then once that dries, you put a layer of Mod Podge over the top of the napkin to make sure that it becomes waterproof and has the same finish. Now I start with the edges is how I start and work my way kind of going outwards. You can see from the napkin there, and I will just kind of go closer into the center and work my way out. I love how this turned out. I love the feel of it, that vintage look. I think this design is perfect. It's gonna look so cute. You guys wait until you see it on the tiered tray together with everything. You're gonna love this. I think it turned out beautiful.
I have this tag from Easter from Dollar Tree, and I really like the shape of this sign. I'm always looking for different shapes at Dollar Tree of signs to use. So I like to cover up the portion that I don't need with all the glitter and everything like that, because it's easier to cover it up to me than it is to sand it and try and peel it all off and everything. So on the back side, I'm just using some hot glue and some craft paper to cover up all of that. Now that is a beautiful design that is on the back. You could easily leave it as that, make it a two-sided sign. That's fine too. A lot of times I get people requesting like, what if I was to resell this or something and they want to cover it up and find an easy way. This is definitely easy. I just cut around the edges of that craft paper, and then in a slow downward motion with my sander, I just sand off all of the edges, and it gives it a very crisp, clean edge. If you notice any of the paper coming up, you just put a little bit more glue down and voila, it's fixed. So now I'm going to find some scrapbook paper that kind of reminds me of like oceany. I want to kind of go with a navy blue color. And so I am just using this right here. This came from a pack I got at Hobby Lobby, but any paper would work that you would like to use. I just really like the deep blue. To me, these look like little ocean bubbles or something on here. So I'm just using my purple glue stick. You guys know that I'm a big fan of this glue. Honestly, it has to be this particular kind of glue. This is the one I've had the most success with. So just know that if you're new here, it's the Elmer's Purple School Glue Stick. I love it. It seems to hold very well, and I don't get any bubbles or anything like I do with Mod Podge. After trimming off the excess paper, I just sand in a downward motion to break that paper off, kind of get it off there. It gives it a nice crisp look. It looks like that paper was cut to go on the tag. So now I just used a pencil and I poked through the little hole there. And I have these starfish and sand dollars that I got at Dollar Tree. They just come in a 3-pack. And so I'm using 2 of the starfish, and I apologize that the bottom of the sign is cut off right here. Hopefully they fix that here in just a second for you. But I put the sand dollar in the middle, and I kind of glued the sand dollar. It has 2 different sides, and I glued it with kind of what would be like the bottom portion up because I felt like it had a little bit more detail, and I liked that it was raised off the sign a little bit more like that. I'm just using hot glue, but you could easily use some kind of super glue or Gorilla Glue or something like that if you would like. Now I got this nautical rope at Dollar Tree that has this cute 2-tone to it. So this is what I'm using for the rope hang tag on the top. I love this design because you can customize it to any season, any time. I mean, you can use any color of scrapbook paper, any type of embellishment, rope, anything on the top. Now I spray the little rope down. I do this all the time with rope and twine because it relaxes it to help it kind of get a more straight look. So just a little tip there, if you work with twine or rope and it always kind of curls a different way on you, spritz it with a little bit of water. Now on the side of this, I had an idea. They have some little jute twine that is also this 2-tone, and I thought it would be cute to make an edge to the sign. I've never done this before, so I wasn't sure how it would turn out, but guys, I actually really like it. It gives a very finished look to this. So I just run a little glue onto the edge of the sign, as you can see here, and then I am just slowly taking that twine and I am pressing it into the glue, and I'll let it sit for maybe 30 seconds before I move on to like the next side of the sign, and I'm just keep pressing it and making sure that it is straight. And I just thought it was kind of a fun little, I loved this twine and I wanted to incorporate it somehow, and I thought this just ended up being really cute. When I get to the edge of the sign here, I realized where I had glued this little piece of rope earlier to cover my seam in the paper. I realized I needed to take it up. So if you do this, maybe wait to put that rope over the seam of the paper till the very end. But I just go over each of these curves and I just use my fingers to kind of bend that twine into place where those little bumps are there to get that little curve in the corner, or not curve in the corner, but the actual like bend in the corner, if that makes sense. And then when I get to the end, I just cut it off and glue it together, and I put this little piece of rope that I have covering my seam, I just glue it back into place. And that is it for this tag. It turns out so cute. If you can cut some paper and use a glue gun, you've got this one figured out. But I think it looks so cute either hanging or you can prop it up like this. I love this, and it is totally coastal and nautical. At Hobby Lobby, I found these cute little cutting boards. Now, cutting boards are the rage. I've seen people find them at Target. I've seen people find them even at Walmart. So wherever you can find, you might even have some laying around your house. This is just a little teeny mini size. I'll even leave a link below to some that I found on Amazon that are a little bit bigger than this. And I made this cute little graphic on Canva. Now, I figured out how to link these, and I'll link it down in my description box so that way you can have access to these graphics too if you happen to like them or want to use them. If you're familiar with Canva, it'll be very easy for you, but I'll just leave that link down in my description box. I placed a circle around this one so I would know kind of where to cut. I could have even just glued it onto the cutting board and then sanded it off like you've seen me do before. Would have worked just fine too, but I just decided to do it this way this time. And then I'm just going to use some of the purple Elmer's school glue when I glue this down to give a good firm hold to it. This I feel is a little bit better than Mod Podge since it is just regular paper that I did it on. If you did it on like cardstock or something, Mod Podge would probably work just as fine as well. I have used this purple school glue for years and I have never had a problem with a project like coming up or anything. I do seal my projects with Mod Podge after, so that might help in that. But I've had a few people message me and ask me if I've ever had a problem with anything like lifting up, and I personally have not. Now I'm just using my brayer to flatten that out, and you can see some of the excess glue comes out a little bit there. And I just take a baby wipe. This does dry clear, but I just don't want any like goopiness around the edges, if that makes sense. So I just take a baby wipe and wipe that off. I didn't really need to cut the twine holder off when I cut the tag off, so I could have left that on, but since I did cut it off, I just make a new little twine holder just by looping it through the hole and then pulling it through as you saw me do there. I do end up cutting it a little bit shorter from the first time that I do it. I realized that I didn't like where the knot was, so I make it just a little bit shorter and kind of customize it there just to add a little something to it. Now, after I get this done, I still feel like it's a little bit, plain, I guess, and you can jazz this up however fits your decor, but I just got another little bit of twine and I just wrapped it around that handle. I mean, this is just for decor. Even though it said it was food safe in the beginning, the stuff we've done to it, it clearly is not food safe anymore. So I'm just wrapping some twine around it just to give a little bit of texture and a little bit of something else, I guess. And I just tie it in the back so that way it adds just a little bit more detail to it. What do you guys think of this? I think it turned out really cute. I love that cute little graphic there. Again, I'll leave the link down in the description box for that. But I think this turned out darling, and it's going to match perfectly with all of the other cherry items I have. So this is kind of a twofer DIY. I have these two that I'm going to do that achieve a very similar look. I have had both of these in my stash for a while, waiting for the perfect project, and I feel like it was time to use these. This I did pick up last year at Hobby Lobby in their clearance. It came from their kind of beachy section, and I mean, I did love the sign, but it was kind of beat up, and so I do want to give it a new coat of paint. This came from a thrift store, and I loved the shiplap wood look to it, and I thought it would be perfect. And then you can also use something like this from Dollar Tree. And then I'm just going to use those cute little anchor and that little starfish that you saw, and we're going to make this really cute. Now I'm taking my fingernail file and my emery board and just filing this down to smooth it out so I can paint it. Now I'm going to put a link to those emery boards because they've been on sale as of the recording of this video anyways for 50% off, and they are the best emery boards, whether it be for your nails or for your crafting.
You guys, this is just vintage duck egg from Dixie Belle. It's like my new favorite color right now. I really love kind of the grayish, bluish, greenish tones that it has, but it was a little dark for what I wanted. And so I'm just going to take some white wax here, and I really wanted this to kind of have a more weathered look to it. And I thought this would be a really great way to achieve that. I love how it does come out. I'm just painting it on, and you can paint it on with a brush, with a sponge, however you want to do this, with a baby wipe. And I just get it all over because it's going to kind of fall into any of the crevices that were left from the chalk paint or your brush ridges or anything. And then I'm just going to wipe that off here, either with, I think I'm just using a paper towel here rather than a baby wipe, because I did want to make sure that a decent amount stayed on. I feel like when you're using a baby wipe, you have a little bit more moisture, so it does wipe a little bit more off. So that's kind of a matter of personal preference. But I'm just showing you a different type of technique here in case you want to give this a try. So I do this all over the frame. I really do like the white wax and how it does brighten things up and the weathered look that it gives. So it's just kind of a different way to distress things or give things a little bit of an embellished look rather than using the typical brown antiquing wax. And you, of course, can go as heavy or as light as you want on this. So again, just a matter of personal preference, but I really do love the look that it gets. But I just make sure I go over every single edge, do the exact same process, paint it on, and then I just take my paper towel and wipe it off. Now initially I was going to paint this back portion of the sign here, so I thought I was going to file it off, and then I thought it would be really fun to put some craft paper on there, just some scrapbook paper. So I'm just trying a couple of different types here, different wood tones. You'll have to let me know which one you like the best, if you like the direction that I went or if you like some of these others better. But there is this burlap from Dollar Tree, and I did have some actual like burlap paper. You can see how similar it is. It even has like the imperfections that you might find in the typical burlap like that. And I really liked the way that this looked and thought that could be a really good like natural look. I felt like the beachy theme. I just like the natural tones with it. You can see here I'm just showing you a sheet of actual burlap, like how good it looks compared to this, but I really think I'm going to achieve the flattest look with the burlap paper. So that's the direction that I went. Now you guys know this is like my most favorite crafting staple is this purple Elmer school glue. I love this stuff and it works so well, but I do just want to make sure I give a heavy coat on all of the edges here because I don't want any chance that that paper is going to peel up. So where there's a little bit of unevenness there, I just use my finger to kind of smudge that into all of those little nooks and crannies so you can get the best bond possible. And then once I get over all of the edges, I just make sure that everything is covered, the entire surface there, with a good liberal amount of this school glue here. You can see I'm even just going around the edges one more time just to make sure that nothing has the chance of coming up. So now I'm just checking my paper to make sure where the top and the bottom is, so I make sure that I can get it centered correctly, and then I'm just going to place that down kind of into the corner. I say kind of because I want to leave a little bit of the paper on either side because I want to be able to go in and customize my edge, and you'll see what I mean by that here in a moment. So I just wipe any excess glue off there, and then the key to this is to use a brayer, and you can just get these on Amazon. You can get them at your craft store. You typically buy the Mod Podge because it is a Mod Podge brand, the one that I have. There's probably other areas you can find it, but that's just where I found this one. And then I'm just going back and forth in all different directions to make sure that there's a really good bond. And now I'm just cutting with an X-OXO knife here as close to the edge. You could use scissors to cut this off as well, because I was just I got this new knife, little X-OXO knife here, so I was just trying that here. So it took me a few times to kind of get how much pressure I would need, but you can see it does do a really good job of getting very close to your item. What really gives this that customized look though, and make it look like it was actually made to go on this piece, is taking your fingernail file and going in a downward motion to tear the paper, and then to get all of that excess off, you go side to side. But you can see you want to do that downward motion, never up to peel the paper off of your surface. You're going down towards the surface, and that way you're going to keep that bond with your glue. And then once you get all of those edges kind of torn, you go side to side. Now I'm just using this Gorilla Glue right here. It has a nice little brush on it. I thought this would be the best option to glue this back into our frame here. So I just go around all of the edges with this, giving a liberal coat, so that way I can stick our now covered in burlap background back into the frame. So you just make sure that you hold that down and have the proper amount of time to let that super glue cure on there. And then if you need to go around the edge for an additional reinforcement, you can do that. Now I have this darling anchor. It came from Dollar Tree. It had a little tassel coming off of one end and some darling little wooden beads at the top of it. I did take those out so I can use those in another project, but I'm just going to put some hot glue on this, and that's how I'm going to glue it to the burlap paper there. I just really think this is coming together, and I love how this looks. So now moving on to the second project in this DIY here is I'm taking this thrift store frame. I call it a frame, but I mean really is a background here. But I just sanded it down to get the wording off because it did say Happy Holidays on there. And then I am going to paint over it, I decided. I didn't know if I was going to leave the wood natural or not, but I felt like where I left the last one natural, I wanted to add some color to this one. And I'm just taking this starfish from Dollar Tree, and I removed the twine off of it, and I took the staples out of the back. It took me a little bit of time, as you can see, to get those removed, but I wanted to make sure that I had a very smooth surface that I could glue this down. And it was giving me a little bit of a hard time, and I think it was probably just a me issue, not the starfish issue, but sometimes you have a little bit of a difficult time getting these things out, but I finally did it. So I'm taking, this is just Ocean. This is by Waverly's chalk paint. I know that Folk Art makes a color that is very similar in blue, so if that's the brand you can find. I've started to hear reports of Waverly chalk paint being back in Walmart, so I'm gonna have to go check that out. If you've seen it, comment below and let me know if you've been able to find it or not, because I do love the colors that Waverly had. But Waverly's chalk paint and Folk Art chalk paint are the same company, just different brands that they make, so I feel like the Folk Art does a really good job if that's all you can find. Now I'm just using some white wax on this because I wanted it to have a weathered look too, and kind of have it look almost like that, like it's been weathered by the ocean and smoothed down there. And so I thought it would be a really nice look. It's kind of a matter of personal preference, but again, I just paint that on, and then I just take a paper towel and I wipe it off, and you can see how heavy I went with it here. And then I just kept wiping it off until I get the desired look that you want and how much coverage that you do want. I did use a little bit of a Q-tip to clean in between the little grooves there, so that way the wax wasn't down in there, and it kind of kept that traditional shiplap look. Now I'm just taking this hot glue on the back of this starfish here, and then I just decided which was going to be my top, which was my side, and everything, and placed that down. And that was easy peasy there. And then I do just take my heat gun. If there's any glue, like hot glue webs, the heat gun is a great way to get those to disappear. So I just went around all of it to make sure that there was no like hot gun spidery webs. But look at how beautiful both of these pieces look. They're both very similar, but yet they look very different. Which one would you prefer to have in your home? Would you use both of them to decorate? I think they both ended up beautiful, and they're going to be great to achieve that nautical or beach look.
This particular riser can be done with any piece of scrap wood that you may have. If you don't have any scrap wood, they do sell little cute pieces like this at Hobby Lobby. You can see the $3.99. And then I'm just using my heat tool just to kind of scrape that little price tag right off. This will be the bottom of this, and it does have this cute little beveled edge on it, but it is a little bit rough. So I just kind of go over it because I don't want to get any slivers, and I want my paint to go on fairly smooth over that. So I just smooth that and then wipe it down. Now I am going to be painting this all the same color, so I want to make sure that I have the feet on, so when I paint it, I can paint it all together. And I'm just using some wooden beads on this. I'm just using a combination of the wood glue and the hot glue to get these beads on for the little feet on our riser tray. And I'm just going to, I left it sitting overnight. The hot glue just helps hold them in place, and that wood glue is what it gives it the really strong hold there. And then I'm just using kind of a spring green color. Whatever is speaking to you the day that you make yours is what color you'll want to do. I mean, the possibilities are endless. I really want to age this though. So once I get this completely covered with as many coats as I want, I'm taking just a chip brush with some antiquing wax, and you can kind of watch how I distress this. Now I know this may not be to everyone's liking, but some people do really like this. I just wanted this to look very aged and very weathered, so I am just lightly going across with that antiquing wax because I wanted to look like maybe this green paint was just paint that was like chipping away and you could see the wood underneath, or maybe it was just really grimy or something. But I go around all of the edges and everything with this technique. Before I pass my brush through again though, you do want to make sure that it's dry, or it will kind of smear that wax, if that makes sense. So I'm very careful to kind of not go over the areas I have already done. But I'll let you just go ahead and watch and see kind of how I finish distressing this around all of the edges and everything. Here is this riser completely staged. What do you guys think of this? I know that distressing is not everybody's taste, but I am very happy with how it came out. I love it. It's going to be perfect, and I think it looks so cute right here, and I am just loving that color of green.
I have had this little windmill from Dollar Tree sitting in my stash for a little while now, and it's kind of been staring at me, waiting for the perfect project, and I feel like I've done a good job with this one, so you'll have to let me know what you think. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of dismantle it a little bit. So I just kind of take off that front little button on it, and then just using a cross between pliers and then some wire cutters, I kind of just bend and pry, and it does come apart pretty easily. It takes just a little bit of work, but like most Dollar Tree stuff, it's not too bad to get apart. And then I take one of the blades and I just trace it across my scrapbook paper that I'm going to use. And then I'm just going to use some Mod Podge and paint that onto each of the blades, and then just place the scrapbook paper down, and I'm going to press it really tightly to make sure that it gets a good bond, and then just kind of rub out any bubbles or anything. To make this have a really crisp, clean edge on each of these, I just take my emery board. You could use a finger sander, sanding block, sandpaper, anything like that. Sometimes the emery board just gets into some tight spaces that some of those other things don't, at least for me. So I am using a downward motion, so you want to go downward so you're not peeling up the scrapbook paper, and it's just going to sand off the edge to give this a really crisp, clean look. So now I'm going to do the center little button. So I'm just going to trace it out and do the same thing with it with the Mod Podge and with sanding. Then you're going to take any type of sign blank that you have. This happens to be a wood canvas that I had. I think I purchased this one at Walmart. And or you could just use any type of sign from Dollar Tree, but I coated the whole base in white chalk paint, and now I am just going to tape off some stripes. So I use a piece of tape as my spacer to put in between. You can see here I'll put that down, and then I put the next piece of tape down and peel that middle one up. That leaves you perfectly spaced stripes that we're going to do. We're going to paint red stripes on top of this white base, and I pounce along the edge of the tape to give it a seal, and then I kind of go back in, and that's when I fill in all the negative space there. So I do this throughout the whole piece, both on the front and on the sides. And now for what we hope is one of the most satisfying things is when you peel the tape back and you can see those nice crisp lines. I think this turned out really good. There's not any bleeding on here. I do just have a couple of spaces that my fingers touched with white paint that I had to go touch up, but that's super easy. And I'm going to take my emery board, you can use sandpaper or anything, and you know how I distress things, so I'm going to go through, kind of want this to look like a little bit of a faded flag, if you will. So I'm just going to go sand all of the edges, and then since you are doing red and white, you want to make sure that you do the stripes individually. You don't want to kind of cross the red over onto the white, or it really will make those white stripes turn a red color. So I actually don't distress the white stripes, just the red ones, if that makes sense. So then I am going to put some glue just on the ring behind each of the blades and then in the middle. And then I'm just going to firmly place that down and hold that windmill onto the base and just hold it tight until that glue dries. And then I'm going to glue that little button on the front to give it kind of a complete look.
I love how this turned out. I'm so excited to put this in my house for 4th of July. I go overboard for 4th of July. I know a lot of you guys have left me comments stating that you do the same thing for 4th of July, and I think this is going to be the most perfect addition to my decor for 4th of July. I also just want to let you know that I did get this scrapbook paper at Joann's. They have some really cute 4th of July scrapbook paper. So let me know down in the comments if this is something that you think that you would recreate. As I was going through the Hobby Lobby clearance, I found this little round vase, which is the perfect size of those little round watermelons that you see in the produce section at the grocery store, or that maybe you grow in your garden. So I'm giving this a really good coat with that same green spray paint, and I can't remember the exact name of the color, but it is from Krylon. And after it dries completely, I take it in and I'm going to make these little stripes that you see on the watermelon, or the veins. I'm not sure if they have a technical name, so if you know, let me know down in the comments, because I'm not sure. But I just go through and I use about 3 different colors of green paint, and I don't do them completely straight. I kind of make some of them go a little bit wonky and wavy, and I'm just tapping because they're kind of like faded lines, if that makes sense at all. You can kind of see what I'm doing here, to give kind of that feel that they all kind of blend into one another. But I go all the way around this with all 3 different colors and kind of go overlap each other in some areas and in between each other to give this the look of an outside of a watermelon rind. Now is when I really feel that this is starting to look like a watermelon. What do you guys think? Do you guys think I did an okay job on this? I feel that the stripes and kind of going back and forth with all the different colors really helped bring that out. So now I'm going to take some pink flowers that I have, and I'm just going to cut them down to size and kind of arrange them in this little vase. Obviously, I'm using this pink color because I feel like it's really reminiscent of watermelon, and I love the pink and green together. But any kind of flower that you have or that you would want to use would totally be good in here. So I just go ahead and arrange these, and then I place the little leaves from the flowers kind of around just to bring in a little bit more greenery to the flower arrangement portion. Would this not be the cutest centerpiece for a picnic table at a barbecue? I think this turned out darling. Even if you're decorating with watermelons in like your china hutch or on a tiered tray, I think this is the perfect addition. I love putting out coastal and beach decor in the summertime in my home, and so when I found this whale for $1, I thought, okay, I have to grab this. This is such a nice substantial piece, and I really can make this match my home. So I'm just going to use my heat tool to remove the stickers off the front and the back, which they were on pretty good, so it takes me just a minute to work with that. But I do love using my heat tool to get stickers and things like this off. It helps a lot. A hairdryer would also work too, so if you have one of those and you're trying to get a sticker off, definitely remember that trick and that tool. So as I wipe this down, a lot of the blue paint was coming off onto my paper towel, so I'm glad we're going to give this a fresh coat of paint here. This blue doesn't really match the coastal stuff that I have in my home, so that's why I'm going to give him a nice new coat of paint. It takes about 3 coats of white chalk paint to get this completely covered up and not have that blue show through. but it turns out really, really fun. So I'm just putting a little bit of antiquing wax onto just like a little dish there, and I have a chip brush, and that just means that it's like those natural bristles that are really kind of, the spacing on them and everything gives you a really rough texture when you paint with them. So I just placed that in my my antiquing wax, brushed a little bit of it off, and then I'm just lightly going over. I don't stop, I just go in full strokes. You can kind of see I'll dab it in there, I'll wipe a little bit of it off, and then I just place it down and you go from one edge to the other. And this just kind of gives you a little bit of a wood grain texture to it. You can see that some spots are heavier, some spots are lighter. I really like how the variation is, and I can kind of go back in slightly on areas where the paint maybe didn't transfer. You just don't want to go over an area where you already have the paint. You can see I kind of had a little boo-boo of a paint drip there, so I'm just trying to clean that up there as best as I can, and so that way you won't be able to see that. I do the same thing going up the edges, just trying to give that same wood grain texture. You can see how my brush kind of goes over the edge there. You just want to make sure that that top layer is dry when you do this so you're not going to smear anything. I have really liked having my pieces on a little piece of paper on my craft table so I can turn them pretty easily because there's a lot of different angles to this. So I've been starting to use the pieces that Dollar Tree items are wrapped in or Hobby Lobby items are wrapped in. I've been saving those to be able to use to paint on. Not only does it save my table, but it's so nice to be able to turn these in all sorts of different directions. So now I'm doing the same thing to the back of the whale because I don't know where this is going to be set. You may be able to see it from all different angles, especially if you're reselling. You know that you want to finish all angles of your piece, and so that way it looks like it's finished. To me, this almost looks like this whale was carved out of like a boat oar. Like that was kind of the vibe as I was doing this that I was really feeling, and I kind of liked that and thought, oh yeah, this was maybe like an old boat oar that somebody decided to carve this whale out of and have this piece. That was kind of the texture, that weathered wood look. And I really just think this turns out so cute. It's going to be so fun. A lot of times I'll put the coastal decor in like my guest bathroom or I'll have it lots of different areas. My kids love to get it out. So I just thought this was a great addition. And for $1 for a piece this size, I just thought you couldn't beat that. I have this little house shape that I picked up on clearance at a little store we have here in town. Now I know, and look, it was like $1.20 or something like that. It was normally $8. So I got a pretty good deal on it, but you can find these house shapes at Dollar Tree. You can cut your own out of wood, thrifted, lots of fun places. But I do love having these little houses. They're so popular in your decor, and I think that they're just kind of a fun little shelf sitter, a little addition to add. So I'm just going to take off the tags on the back, and then the front had this cute little dog on it. It was, more for like a dog lover. Have this be a lesson to you though, to check those sections of the clearance areas. And even though maybe you don't have a dog or you don't need something that says how much you love your dog, it's a perfect shape to make into something new. Now I picked up this stencil at Hobby Lobby. You could see I got it for 90% off. It was 22 cents. I love to look for stencils because it's so fun to use them in different things of decor. So I'm just kind of trying to fit this on a little ski wampus on my house here. I did give a fresh coat of paint to the house, so I was working with a nice crisp surface. And then I picked a nice blue color. I felt like this is going to match my home. I just love a good blue and white stencil job. And so I'm just going to pounce up and down with my stencil brush. Some people mentioned swirling motion would work well. This was a very delicate stencil, so I did just kind of stick with the pouncing up and down. But just holding it with my fingers, it didn't have to be perfect because I'm going to distress this pretty good, but I wanted it to be as good a job as I could do. I love a reveal on a stencil. I think it turned out perfectly. I love kind of the asymmetrical way to the design. Now I want this to be kind of faded. It is a darker blue and I just wanted a really worn look. I love that look, but obviously you could leave this just plain if you wanted. You can see how much I sanded it back. That's just a matter of personal preference, but I think that it looks just like something that's aged and beautiful and I just love it. Now I'm taking a finger dauber and I'm just putting it in some antiquing wax. A baby wipe would work great to do this. However, I found these finger daubers in at Hobby Lobby, kind of where the distressing ink is. And I've seen a lot of creators use them. I've never seen them at the craft store before. So I picked some up and I actually kind of like them a little bit better than a baby wipe, especially since you can kind of rinse them and use them again. So haven't used them with the inks yet, but I do like them with the antiquing wax. And I think that using the antiquing wax around the edge is just going to give this a little bit of definition and add another layer of some character to this piece. This is the completed house. I think it's so cute. I contemplated putting like a little hole in it for like a bird house, but I ultimately decided not to. I just thought the simplicity of the piece to use in your decor was so nice the way that it was. It's something that kind of is a basic or a staple piece that you can have switch out with different seasons or different vignettes. It's so cute displayed with this bird, but I think that it would be so fun on a tiered tray or something. What do you guys think of this?
This is just one of the little Glade candle jars that I had left over that I would hang on to. And so I have kind of a few of these and I love coming up with different projects for them. But I want to have like a little coastal plant. So I thought it would be kind of fun to do some rope around this. So I'm just taking some of the Dollar Tree rope and just using some hot glue. I just kind of do a little line of it, like a little bead of glue. And then I will take, and I like to use these little finger protectors, and I do just get these at Dollar Tree. You can also get some like on Amazon or any craft store. But you can see I just do the bead of hot glue, and then I will gently press that rope into the glue and let it dry before I move on to the next section. I have been asked a few times about the type of hot glue that I use on glass to get it to stay, and I either use the Gorilla brand or I use the Surebonder brand, and I've never had a problem with those with it coming off of the glass. So just be aware of that. I decided to do 4 rows of just the regular rope there, that traditional rope color, and you can see I just cut it off there and pick a place that's going to be the back of your little planter here so that way you can kind of keep all of your edges to that. It will still look nice, but if you kind of pick one section where all of your rope ends, then you can kind of hide that away, if you will, and so you don't have to have it like showing raw edges anywhere. So I'm just taking some of this two-toned rope from the nautical section at Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to do a couple rows of this, and then I will continue on with the traditional rope. I thought this would just kind of be a cute little way to break up that rope, add a little bit of that blue coastal vibe into this. I really think that this two-tone rope sets it off. And this really is so simple. It's just a matter of gluing a little bead of glue and pressing some rope into it. I feel that this is a very good, easy, simple project, and it ends up being so cute in the end. And after I get maybe like 3 rows or so of that two-tone rope, I just, like I said, continue on with this traditional rope. When I get to the top, I just do one last little ring around it to make sure it goes up over the edge of that glass container, so that way you can't see the glass at all. And then you can kind of watch how I finish this off here. I just kind of twist those edges around so they're nice and taut. And then I just kind of place that down. You can see here, I'll just do the glue, and then I will just hold that down and kind of tuck that little end really tightly down over the edge there to kind of make sure that it's all done there. And then I just take some various florals that I have, some little broken off pieces from some, and stick all in there. Now I have this from Dollar Tree, and I just take it and give it a good coat of spray paint. And I wanted to give it a white spray paint to kind of keep with that clean coastal vibe. And then this is so easy. I'm just going to wrap this rope around maybe 3 times here. I just put a little bit of the hot glue on one portion of it, and then I just spin this around. And then to glue it on, I cut that off, you can see here. I'm going to kind of bring that over the edge so it kind of looks like a little knot there. And even though I intended for this to be the back, I ended up liking that the most and made it the front of mine. And then I have this onion grass from Dollar Tree, and to me it kind of looked like sea grass that grows. Like if you've been to like the Oregon coast or anywhere in there, I'm sure that on other coasts they have the same type of grass that grows everywhere. That's the big, tall, and it just kind of sways so nicely in the wind. That was the vibe that I was going for with this. But here's a look at them together. I think they really set each other off nicely. I really love how these both turned out. I feel like they do have a very good beachy coastal vibe, and they're gonna look so cute with everything put together. I found these darling napkins and this cute little sign at Dollar Tree, and I loved the design on these napkins. And I love when I find cute napkins because I always think of things that I can decoupage with them or use because they work so perfectly for that. So this little sign was just in the wedding section at Dollar Tree, and it was kind of like a shadow box type style. And I'm carefully removing this little welcome sign because in my mind, I thought, well, I can probably use it in another project, right? So if you're a crafter, you may know what I'm talking about with that. You like to save a lot of different little pieces for things. Anyway, I take that welcome sign off there, and then I do kind of sand it down or clean it up a little bit with my putty knife there, just to kind of make sure that it's a little bit smooth. So when I do decoupage the napkins, you don't get a lot of bumps there. So I do paint the frame a blue color. I kind of had a color scheme in mind, so you can tailor this to exactly what your idea of summer decor items are. I kind of wanted to go with more like ice cream colors, like popsicle theme, like that, if that makes sense. So that's up to you on how you end up doing your color scheme. But I went with like some blues and pinks, yellows, and I'd like a darker blue, a darker pink. And now you can see that I'm just painting the inside of that sign white, so that way you can't see the words. And I did try to sound those words off a little bit, but it didn't work so well. So I just went ahead and did some paint. Now I'm just taking the back layer of the napkin off because it is a 2-ply napkin. So you just tear that back piece off, and I'm just going to cut out one of the little areas of design here. So you can see there's quite a few little areas here that you could use to decoupage different things with if you're not needing that word, the sweet summer, to be on there, which I end up not using that. You've got, with one napkin, 4 different popsicle projects that you could do, or do this with a friend or kids or grandkids or something like that. It's a lot of fun. Instead of cutting around the design of the napkin, I'm just taking a paintbrush and dipping it in a little bit of water and going around where I will end up gently tearing the design to kind of give it a more natural edge than like a harsh cut edge, if that makes sense to you. Now I know I get told a lot that they have special water pens. If you want to go out and invest in one of those, then the water is kept right in or water brush pen. It's kept right in the handle of your brush, so you don't have to keep dipping it in water. However, I just like to use what I already have on hand, so just know that they do sell those if that's something, if you want to get into this a lot. That does make it maybe a little bit easier for you, so you're not having to reach over and dip your brush in water every time. But you can just see how I gently pull that away, and it leaves kind of that nice little torn edge there. So now I'm just taking some Mod Podge. You want to coat the whole area so that way it all has a similar finish to it. And you can use glossy, you can use luster, matte, whatever type of Mod Podge you have or want to use, that is totally up to you. They're all going to work with this process the same. You do want to make sure that you are doing thin coats and that it is fairly even. And then once you have that down, you're going to take your napkin and you're just going to place it down. And then you're just going to start with your finger spreading out from the center out. And this kind of alleviates having any like bubbles or crinkles or anything in the napkin there. And so I just kind of work very slowly and move out towards the edges, and it goes fairly quickly. Now I've seen some people even take like some cling wrap or some like saran wrap and kind of crumple that up into a ball to help with this process. I'm going to try that next time because I haven't ever tried that, but I have seen a few crafters do that, and so I'm curious to see how much better that works. So look into that or try that if you want. But once you have your design down here, I'm just taking some of the Mod Podge and gently going over the edges and the top of the design. This is going to secure it. It is going to make it so it is permanent there, and it's going to give a very nice finish to it. You can see how this turns out here. I love this. It looks like those were printed directly on this little frame here. I think it's going to be darling for a summer tiered tray. Have you ever tried this decoupage technique? I would love to know down in the comments.
For this DIY, I am using a canvas from Dollar Tree and this little bee pick that I got there. It is so cute. It is a rainbow color, but I'm just going to snap this little pick part off of it because I'm going to end up putting onto my canvas. Now I am going more for a French country bee theme here, so I'm going to paint over this canvas. You could use any type of sign blank that you have or that you wanted to get at Dollar Tree. I just like the square shape of this, and it's what I had on hand. I am also going to cover this bee. Yes, I know it is beautiful, all rainbow colored, but it does not fit my theme. So I just want you to see that you can paint over things and make them match your own decor. It does take about 2 or 3 coats on both of these to make sure that I get the coverage that I want, and you can do these in any color. Now I'm just taking some antiquing wax and I'm going to completely cover this bee, and I'm going to end up wiping off most of this antiquing wax. What this is going to do is there's a lot of raised parts on the tin of this little cute bee, and that antiquing wax is going to settle into all of like the little nooks and crannies, if you will. So when I wipe that off, you can see here, you'll be able to see all that little detail that's on there. It also gives it a very aged look, which if you've been around here for a minute, you know that I am a very big fan of that. So again, this would be optional. You can do whatever distressing technique you would like. I just thought this is the way that I went, and I really liked how it turns out. After I do get all of the coverage, I kind of go around all of the edges to kind of bring out a little bit more around the edges to kind of give it a little definition when I put it on the sign. So I just used some painter's tape and tape off kind of a ticking stripe on this little canvas. To me, that really speaks French farmhouse feel. So again, this would be a totally optional thing to do, and I am using a lavender color. So if you like this color, wonderful. If not, you can definitely tailor it to what you like. I thought this would just be a very good centerpiece, a grounding piece for that bee to sit against. So I just kind of use the pounce method against the tape to seal that. So I go around all the edges and pounce that paint on, let that dry, and then I go in with my brush to do my second coat to give it a little bit better coverage. I love the satisfying feeling of peeling back that tape when you do stripes and having them all look crisp and clean. Now just know that if you ever have an area you need to touch up, you can just take a little fine brush and go back in with your base color and kind of touch it up if you need to. Now I thought it would be nice to have this bee have a little bit of a 3-dimensional look against this sign here. So I am just putting a little bit of cute, like 2 little wooden cubes from Dollar Tree, and I just glue those onto the back of the bee, and then I just kind of eyeball this as I glue it down into the center. Once I press that down, I realize the wings do feel pretty flimsy, so I take 2 more cubes and I just glue them underneath either side of the wings. That just gives it a little more stability so those wings aren't kind of flapping around there. And look at how beautiful this looks. I love how this turned out. I love the neutral tone of the bee. I love the purple color. I just think this is absolutely perfect. What do you guys think of this? Okay, if we want to talk about crafting your stash, these fish definitely take the cake. I have had these fish forever, wondering what the heck I'm going to do with them. And then it suddenly occurred to me to make them kind of like hanging fish, like a fisherman at the beach or something. But honestly, these fish have stared at me literally for so long. And it's just one of those things I picked up one day thinking, oh, I'll think of something to do with these. And nothing has ever come to me. But I was kind of excited when I came up with this cute idea. So I'm just painting them in corresponding colors. I do a blue color, kind of like a green color, and then a little like stonish color, if that makes sense, so they kind of match. And I want these to look really worn out, like they've kind of been around for a long time. Of course, you guys, if you've watched me for any length of time, you know that I love distressing things. It's just kind of my style. So make it your own. If it's not your style, totally fine, do whatever you want. But I take some antiquing wax after I have sanded these down, go over all the ridges, all the little places like that, just kind of give it a little dirty look. And then I take some white paint and I do the same thing and dry brush over that as well. So really quick with these to kind of go, you do have those little ridges. You just want to make sure you get your paint in between all of the little ridges. My kids love to play with these fish. They're absolutely darling, but for DIYing it, it was a little difficult to come up with something. So now I'm just taking some twine and I'm tying that around And I kind of put it in like one of the ridges in the back so you can't really see it. It's kind of hidden there, kind of like it really is hooked in the fish's mouth, if that hopefully makes sense to you. And then I'm just going to tie a cute little loop at the top here. So just kind of like tying a knot, but then not pulling it all the way through, just making sure that that's pulled tight. And then I just glue, so this does look like it comes out of the fish's mouth on the back side of this, just a little line of glue. And then I kind of push that jute twine down into it. So you can kind of see what I'm doing here. And this will just help it hang the way that I want it to and not go off to the side. And it will give that illusion that it is like an actual fish that's been caught. One thing I quickly do want to mention is that when I tied these together, I staggered the length of the twine so that way they were not all at the same length. And when I held them up, they kind of twisted different directions and everything. So I decided to kind of glue mine together so that way they weren't like literally flopping everywhere. So that's up to you, but they hang really cute. This would be so cute hanging off like a little peg or something, or even hanging off of a tiered tray. I think they turned out super cute, and they just look like they've been fish that have been caught. And I finally got to do something with my Dollar Tree little wooden fish. I found these stickers at Dollar Tree and I think they are so cute, and they have a little three-dimensional look to them. And I have this little frame that I got out of the wedding section at Hobby Lobby. The wedding section, guys, is the most underrated section at your craft store, I swear. I find the best deals there, and I think most people think like, oh, I don't have a wedding, I don't need to shop there. You can find some really good things. So I'm just showing you that instead of sanding that, I could have just placed one of the Dollar Tree cutting boards in the back there, or you can do this directly onto a Dollar Tree cutting board or any frame. And if you want that wood look, use one of those cutting boards or just a plain frame. However you want to do this, it's gonna work, you guys. It's so simple. So my frame was pretty beat up, so I'm just taking some white paint and I'm just going over and just giving it a really good coat. I like this frame because it has a very good texture to it, and I'm going to do a little bit of aging to it once I get these stickers on here. So I'm taking this darling little whale, and then there's these three little pieces on the bottom here that have the seahorse, the sand dollar, and the little sea turtle. I place them out first to make sure I like them, and then I'm going to add some glue just to make sure it gives them a little bit of extra stick so they're not going to be peeling off or anything like that. And then centering in that middle sand dollar there, I place that in the center there, and then I go onto the other sides here and place those other two. And it's just a little bit of hot glue. You could even add some super glue or something. The stickiness on these is really good. That might even just work. But I just wanted to make sure they weren't going to be peeling off because I really wanted this to last. And then I just make sure that they're evened up. I eyeball a lot of things, so if measuring is your jam, you can totally do that. Now on to distressing this frame. I'm taking some antiquing wax. You can use whatever brand, whatever kind you like, and I am just going to use any type of brush really, but I'm using just one of the stencil chip brushes from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to do this in sections. So I'll put it all over this whole side of this frame right here, and then you'll see what I'm going to do. I know distressing is not everybody's favorite thing, so this is completely optional. I'm just showing you if you happen to have like a three-dimensional frame or just this technique for something you might like to do it on, but I'm just using a baby wipe right here, and I'm just going to wipe the top sections of this off. And so you're going to see it's going to leave quite a bit of that antiquing wax down in the little crevices, and that's what I'm looking for. So you don't want to wipe too much off or press too hard because you don't want it to come out of those little grooves there. And we can go back and brighten up the top portion with a little bit more paint. After I have that section to my desired liking, I just move on to the next section, and I just work in sections so the whole thing, it doesn't start to dry or anything like that. And you just, the same process, you put that wax on there, and then you'll just lightly wipe off over the top and over all those raised areas. It cleans off, and then it leaves all that wax down in the little crevices there. Once I have all of my antiquing wax on, I just lightly get a brush with a little bit more of that white paint on it and just lightly go over the top. It's just going to brighten up all of those raised areas. This also would be optional if you like the way the other way I had before. It almost looks like that pressed tin or something. But I did want to brighten it up a little bit so it didn't look, you can kind of see up close how it ends up looking. But I like how that looks to brighten it up a little bit there. And that's all there is to this. It is really simple. It's just using some stickers and a frame, or you could even, like I said earlier, just do it on a Dollar Tree cutting board. I think it looks super cute. I would love to know your thoughts on this. I found this darling little sign. This also came from Hobby Lobby. It was $4.99, but I bought it when the table decor was 50% off, so $2.50. I was thinking you could even make this with using like the jumbo craft sticks and some Jenga blocks from Dollar Tree, but I honestly think it might be more expensive and a lot more time. But if you have those items, you can make this as well rather than making a trip special just to Hobby Lobby. So I taped off the base of this, and it was the exact number of letters to spell cherries. And so that's what I'm going to put on here. And so I'm going to make it match my decor. So don't be afraid of buying stuff when you go to a store and you see something and you think, oh, that's cute, but it doesn't match my decor, or I don't really want that word on there. Kind of be thinking when you have a specific theme in mind, like me, when I went, I wanted to do cherry or cherries on something. And when I saw that and it was the exact amount of letters, I knew I could make it work for my decor. So just don't be afraid when you see things of buying them with the intent to change them. That's totally fine. After sanding down those little letters there and getting that black paint and the white letters off, I'm just going to take some lacquer paint from Waverly's chalk paint, but whatever color you're doing will work just fine. It doesn't even have to be chalk paint. And I'm just going to paint each of these little letter tags here. I just give them 2 coats to get a really good base coverage. Now I make a mistake right here. So I thought, oh look, I'm done painting. I can take my painter's tape off. I'm just checking to see if I have any bleed through. At this point, I'm really pleased with myself, not even thinking I have more painting to do. I should have left that painter's tape on. So if you're doing this, you'll learn from my mistake here. Leave your painter's tape on until all the painting is completely done. I don't know why I took it off. I guess I just thought that part was done, and so I wasn't going to need it. Now I have these stencils from Dollar Tree. You guys have seen me use these a bunch of times. I love this font, but as you can see where it's on one sheet, I'm not going to be able to get each individual letter to lay flat how I need to on these little block tags thing, whatever they are here that we're putting our letters on. So I'm just going to slice the stencil down. Now to stencil, I'm just taking a stenciling brush. This came from Dollar Tree, and I cut it flat so the bristles are completely flat. I'll put my base color of paint on, and then I dab it on just like a paper towel or a baby wipe or something like that to get excess off, because you don't want to glob your stencil on. You want to work with layers of paint. So start out light. And I just do an up and down pouncing motion. I'm just holding the stencil down with my finger. And I'm just showing you this first letter here. I won't show you in detail all of these letters, just so that way you can kind of get the basis for how I'm doing this. Once you have your desired coverage, you just lift that stencil up and you should have a perfect thing there. Now, this is where I realized I made a mistake here, is because see how my stencil brush, I'm getting paint all over the part that was taped off. If I had left my tape on there, I wouldn't have a problem at all. So it did wipe off fairly easily. So I did just use a baby wipe and just got that off there. And then of course I go back and retape it so that way I won't have any future problems. So you can see where I made that mistake. So just leave your tape on as long as you can, because even though I didn't think I would be getting paint anywhere near that base, the stenciling, you just never know. So I just continue on with each of the letters there. You can see this ends up spelling the word cherry. I think it's so cute. And if you have any little touch-up points you need to do, you can just go in and touch those up if you had a little bit of splatter. But I love how this turns out. It is something custom. It's something I made. It was not very expensive for the base piece, and I absolutely love it. It's going to look so cute on my tiered tray.
When I was searching ideas for my bee-themed tiered tray, I kept seeing these cute little signs. Now, I've seen these for all sorts of different tiered trays, and it is so amazing how easily you can recreate these. Now, I have these little teeny frames. I got this one at Walmart. It was on clearance after Halloween time. This one was just from another home decor store. You guys, the original price on this was $7.99. Anyway, you can see I got it for $1.21, and they are going to be perfect. And I'm using these 2 different Dollar Tree calendars. I'm just showing you the different calendars, but on the back of each of these, in this little bit larger size on the back, they have a honey and like a kind of a bee theme on those, and I thought they would fit perfectly in each of these. Now you can use the littler size if you want to do like some blocks, for instance. If you don't have any little picture frames like this, that would work so cute as well. Now I'm just using my paint marker here. I actually couldn't find my black paint. I think my daughter might have borrowed it and not returned it. So I'm just using a black acrylic paint marker to do the edge of this frame here. Easily, if I wanted to make this easier, I could have just left it both the natural wood color, and that would have been fine, but I really like the contrast of the black frame. So I just colored all around it, including the inside of the frame here. It's funny because as I was painting this black, I thought it actually looks better with the black frame than the actual actual way I bought it from the store. Anyhow, I'm just using some school glue to place down that picture. Now, I did realize that you could see some of the orange through it. So while it was still wet, I peeled it back and I just took my paint marker and went around the edge of the orange sign. So that way, if you saw anything, it would be the black, not the orange, because the orange was very apparent. Now, I'm just taking some glue and I'm re-gluing it to stick it back down on here after that paint dries. And that way, it just gives it a much crisp, clear edge there. You can kind of see up in the right-hand corner how it turned out there. I'll show you a picture at the end though. But now moving on to the next sign, I did decide to leave this with a natural frame. I liked the contrast, and I am just painting a little bit of white because I wanted it initially what I'm doing is painting it green, but I start out with white because I thought that would be easier to cover the red, so that way I wouldn't have to do as many coats of the green. So kind of like a primer coat, I guess. Anyhow, I didn't tape anything off. I just did my best to kind of cut it in really close. So that's up to you if you would want to use tape or anything. It would be really cute doing some of the little bricks to be able to paint those the different colors, like the little wood blocks, if you did it that way. But I just thought this would look like it was a mat to the frame. And so that was what I was going for here. And I just, again, used some of my trusty school glue to glue that down and center it. And I think these turned out really cute. I mean, for the different... you saw the price of that one sign that I bought, and I didn't really love the design on that. This one I created and made it my own. It's going to match my decor. I think they turned out really cute.
Dollar Tree has these really cute little shadow boxes, and there's a bunch of different designs. So I bought one trying to see if I could use it maybe as a blank template and kind of make it into my own. I just start by removing the back. Now this is nailed in, and I show you here those little nails there. So be careful with those that you don't poke yourself or anything. I do end up taking those out and gluing the back on after I get everything to how I want it to be. I'm just taking the little paint scraper right now, and it takes a little bit of time to scrape all of this little design off of the glass. Obviously, if the design on the glass was something that you wanted already, you could go ahead and keep it. It does take a little bit of time, and just be careful that you don't break that glass. I'm just removing the little three-dimensional flower embellishment there, and I am going to take one of the napkins. This came from Dollar Tree, this napkin, a package of them. I'm just going to put some decoupage on the back. Now you will be able to see this blue through my napkin, but I thought where it was kind of oceany themed, I thought the little white dots looked like bubbles. I liked that. Otherwise, I would paint this to be a neutral color, maybe to like a white or something, or blue, dark blue, to match however I wanted it to show through on my napkin. I hope that makes sense. So I'm just using my nail file here to nail off the edge to kind of make that a clean edge before I go ahead and do my next step, which is take this darling little sand dollar that came from Dollar Tree, and I just put it up there. I thought it looked really cute, so I'm just going to use some hot glue to put this, kind of cover where that flower design was so you don't see that. And then when I glue it down, I place the front back over, and I decide I need to move it down, so while the glue's still hot, I can kind of manipulate that a little bit to how I want it to sit. Hippo was kind enough to send me this cute little cordless glue gun. It has this little magnetic base. You just charge the base, and then your glue gun is ready to go when you turn it on. It uses the little mini glue sticks. It comes with several of those, and it also has that little precision tip, which I really like because I've never really had a glue gun that has a tip like that, and I'm really liking it so far. So if you are interested in that, I'll just leave a link to it down in my description box, as well as a coupon code for it. After I have this glued all back together, I decide that I want to use one of the nautical Dollar Tree stencils. I just want to put the word sea down there in the corner. I thought that would look really cute. Now, I do take my stencil brushes and I cut a flat tip on them because I like that when I am pouncing using my stencil. I feel like you have a little bit more success, and I just go up and down in a little motion there, up and down, and you can see how well that turns out. There are a couple of spots that I do need to go in, and since it is glass, you can just use your fingernail just to kind of get in there and scratch it right off. I thought it was a little bare there, and there was this cute little starfish on the stencil, so I went ahead and placed that after my first part had dried because you don't want to mess that up, and I went back in and put a cute little starfish on there. Now with stenciling, if you go back and there's any little areas, you just take a little detail brush and you can kind of go in and fix any areas if you need to. That would be completely optional. I think this turned out absolutely darling. I think it would be so cute if you had like a little beach themed bathroom, or even did like a nautical tiered tray or something. I think it turned out really cute. What do you guys think of this one? I'm going to make a really cute candle riser out of these terracotta pots. It's just one pot and one saucer. I believe this is a 4-inch pot that I'm using here, and then just the matching size of saucer. So after I take off the tags on these, I'm just going to glue these together. I'm painting both the bottom and the top the same color so I can glue them together before I spray paint them. If I was going to do separate colors, I would probably or obviously want to spray paint them separately and then glue them together, but since I'm going for the same color, we're going to glue them together now. I'm just using some E6000 to do this. This is the best hold that you can have. I've seen other people use Loctite. I've never used that, so I'm not familiar with how it works, but I do know that the E6000 works great. So I'm going to do my best to center the saucer on top of this pot just by kind of moving it around so I can see. You have a lot of like manipulation time with this E6000. It's not like an instant hold, and so you've got a little bit of time to kind of make sure, like maneuver things if you need to. Now I have these clamps, and honestly, I don't think these are necessary, but I was trying to get a really good bond between that saucer and the pot, but I think if you were to like set it down and stack some books on it, you'd be just fine. So this is a really fun color of yellow here. I love this. I've been using it a lot so far this spring and summer, and I thought it would be a really fun, bright color to use to put on my porch. So I'm just going to go around this with the spray paint and give this a really good coat. Now I do want to mention that you always want to, at the end, if you want to have these protected really well, add a clear coat to each of these projects that I'm doing today at the end. That way they're going to withstand the weather, especially if you're going to keep them outside. Now after that spray paint had dried, I'm taking this inside, and this is just a white wax. I thought it would be kind of fun to maybe mellow this yellow, I love how that rhymes, but mellow the yellow down and make it look a little bit like it was weathered, kind of have that nice, if you've never used white wax before, it really does add a beautiful finish on there, kind of lightens it up a little bit. So you put it on kind of heavy, just paint it on with a brush or a sponge brush, or even just like dipping like a paper towel or something into the wax and putting it on. You just want to cover all of those nooks and crannies and grooves and everywhere with this to get a really good coverage. Once you've got the entire piece covered, you go back in with a baby wipe or like a paper towel, and you're going to wipe this back. Now you can use a wet paper towel that will wipe, or a wet wipe that will wipe way more of it off. If you use a dry paper towel, you're going to wipe less of it off. So it just kind of depends on the look that you're going for. But the fun part with this is there's all these grooves that are in and like the ledge and everything on the terracotta pot that you can kind of see that wax kind of stays in. There's even like a little blemish here that wax goes down and kind of stays in there and kind of helps show that. I really like the way that looks. So it's a matter of personal preference, but it's a little bit different than that antiquing wax that you've seen. And I just think this is so cute. You can put like one of those little citronella candles on here on your patio or your porch. How fun would that be to kind of keep the bugs away and have, or even just like a scented candle or something to bring that really nice like aroma to your resting on your porch. I just love how this turns out. It was simple and fun, and I think it's really cute. I have these blocks from Dollar Tree, these little wooden blocks, but you can definitely cut a piece of wood down that you would have. But what I'm going to do is tape a triangle off on 3 sides, so the corner point becomes the middle of a watermelon wedge. So just kind of watch, it'll make sense what I'm doing as I go. So I'm going to paint the watermelon rind. So I'm first going to do a darker green and then go in with a lighter green. And I do just kind of lightly pounce this on to kind of give it, instead of harsh lines, I just kind of want the lines of the watermelon rind to kind of fade into one another. After I am done painting the rind on the 3 blocks, I'm going to go in and do the pink portion of the watermelon. So this is fairly self-explanatory, but I do just go in and make sure all of that negative space from the rind down to the point on all 3 sides of each block is completely covered in the pink paint.
Make sure you get the type of coverage that you want. It may take a couple coats to get all of that, the wood grain and everything covered. So it's up to you how dark you want to do that. It is so satisfying when you peel that painter's tape off and find that you have no bleed through and have such nice, crisp, clean lines. I love that feeling. So I take the painter's tape off of all of these, and you can kind of see how that triangle, the wedge shape of the watermelon looks there. So that's what I'm going for. So the next step, we're going to go in and paint some seeds on our watermelon. I do just use a dotting tool. I got mine in a pack of several that were in like under nail painting supplies on Amazon. I can leave a link to those in my description box below, but I have seen these at Dollar Tree. They come in like a 1 or 2 pack, I think. And I just do a bigger circle at the top and then kind of drag it down a little bit to make the little shape of the watermelon seed. Look at how fun these turned out. I am in love with these. They would be perfect for a tiered tray or even just to set on your picnic table at your backyard barbecue to bring that little bit of watermelon theme in. I love these.
I really love these bee skep baskets. Now, I know they've been popular for a few years. I have yet to try one, but I really liked the shape of these and the look of these, and I thought I would try my own. So I have this little dish. It's just one from Dollar Tree, just one of those little like cake cups or something here. And I am just using a little bit of a thicker twine. I got this at Walmart, but I've seen a lot of people do them with rope. I really didn't want it quite as thick, where I wanted mine a little bit smaller for a tiered tray. So that's why I went for this smaller twine. I definitely do see the benefit of using a thicker rope. However, I think it looks okay in the end, but I'm just going to take you through the process because it was kind of a fun little thing here to make. And honestly, it really does kind of set the tiered tray off. You really can tell what it is in the end. So you do need to use a lot of hot glue, and I'm trying the best to get it so it's not like seeping out of the edges or anything. And I wanted to make sure when I did this that I wasn't gluing it directly to the dish because I didn't want to keep the dish inside of it. So you'll see that I'll grab a tool here in a minute, or I kind of you'll see what I do. I'll show you here in just a minute, but I keep going around each layer, gluing very tightly, trying to get the twine glued to the other twine, not to the dish. So I'm just taking a spatula tool is what this is from my Cricut, and I'm just kind of prying it off of the dish here because I don't want that dish to be part of it. I'm just using that to kind of get the shape started. And so at this point, I feel like I can start tapering my little skep down. Now, I kind of read up on a bee skep on what it actually is. They were man-made using like cane and grass and different things they would weave together to make baskets in a dome shape that they would use so they could gather honey from the bees and things like that. And so I kind of love the concept behind it, but they were very professional and they looked very nice, the baskets they would make. So definitely I would be a beginner bee skep maker because mine doesn't have the best form or shape here. You'll see when it gets done, but I really do love the way that it turns out and it looks so cute. And once I'm able to take this off of my little dish there, I can keep going around and just tapering it up kind of into a dome or a cone shape, I've seen a lot of them in the traditional beehive shape, but when you look at some of the skep baskets online and different pictures of some of the really primitive ones, they are kind of more of like this cone type shape here, which I really did like, and it is different than some of the other ones that I have seen other DIYers make. And once I got to the top, I tied off a loop here with some other twine because we need something that would be the hanging portion of the skep basket. And so I tied that off, and then I just kind of twirled my twine around here. You can kind of see around that loop, so that way it would eventually get glued in and I could kind of center it where I wanted it to be, but it would kind of become one piece with the skep. And so you can kind of see how I'm doing that here. And I just keep gluing all the way around until I get to the point where I can trim off my excess twine and glue it on that last little spot and hold it all together in place. So now I'm just checking to make sure, like, look at the shape of it and everything, and I realize I need to trim those little tails to my loop in the center there. And I take a heat tool here, just like the little flame and aim of flame, whatever you call these things, and I'm just burning off the edges of the twine, but I also kind of wanted it to have a little bit more of a darker charred look to it. So just be very careful, have water, do it outside, whatever you need to do to be safe with that process. Now I'm taking my paint acrylic marker here, and I'm just doing a little circle because we need an opening for the skep. Even though they are traditionally open on the bottom, they traditionally do have some type of opening in them from what I can see. And I'm just doing a little bit of twine around the edge of that. And so I'm just starting at the bottom where it would be most like inconspicuous, I guess, and just twirling that around the little, just working in little teeny sections to get a close enough circle. I did just kind of eyeball this process, but I did 2 rounds of the twine there, and then I burned the edges of that. But I think this looks really cute. I mean, for my first attempt, and it was kind of fun. I mean, it was like 20 minutes maybe to make this an easy project, but you guys wait until you see everything together on the tiered tray, because it really does set everything apart.
I wanted to try this project last year, and so I had been saving some different shapes of glass bottles and jars that I found like at Dollar Tree, the thrift store, the craft store, just my stash. And so this year I ran out of time last year, and so this year I thought this is the perfect time to try this. So I want to make some sea glass, my own type of sea glass here. And I know they sell spray paints to do this, and I'm very curious to try that, but I'm just really trying to use what I have. And I've seen this method using Mod Podge and then just some acrylic paint. So I just poured some Mod Podge into a cup here, and I just added acrylic paint till I got the desired color that I wanted. And I'm doing kind of like a sea foamy green color, and then I thought this blue color was really pretty also, and I thought they complemented each other really well. So those are the colors that I'm going to go with. Now it's pretty simple. You just start by painting this onto your jars. You do a really light coat, work in light coats. I did realize after a little bit that I don't know that I loved the brush that I was using, so I switch over to one of those foam brush tools. You'll see here in just a moment that I do that, and I felt like I got a little bit better coverage, less brush strokes in that. So it just kind of depends on what you're trying to achieve. I will be honest that this process, I'll show you here in the end, they weren't quite as translucent as I was hoping, but I really do like the look that they end up giving here. But it was just simple, all of these different shapes and all of these different types of jars. It was so fun getting to choose the different paints I was going to put on both of them. And you can see I'm still using my brush at this point before I realize I want to switch over to that foam tool. But I mean, the brush probably, once I got done, I realized the brush probably would have been fine to keep using that. The key is you just want to work in really thin coats, not have like it be goopy or anything anywhere. And so just getting off that amount of like excess that you might have. Here's where I decided to switch over to this because I felt like it might work a little bit better. And you can kind of see there's a little bit less brush strokes. Again, in the end, I don't think it really would have mattered the tool that I use. It just, when I was doing this, I didn't know if the brush strokes were really going to make that big of a difference, but I feel like you got them no matter what you used. So I'm just going through the different jars here. I think I have a total of 5 jars. I do 3 of them this green color, and then I ended up doing 2 of them the blue color, and I give them each a couple of coats. I thought this jar with the little teeny dots all over, the raised dots on there, was so cute. And Dollar Tree, I don't remember where I got this one, but Dollar Tree has a lot of fun different textured jars too that I think would be really, really cute to do this with. And
And these are all clear, but I got wondering, and I'll have to try it, is if sometimes you'll see like the colored glass at Dollar Tree that's already like a green color or something like that, or a yellow, that I'm wondering if you were to paint over that, how that would look, because like I said, it didn't end up as translucent as I wanted, so I think you'd be okay to use those, but I'll have to try that sometime. I just went over these 2 jars. With that one with the dots, I had to make sure that the paint and the Mod Podge mixture didn't pool around those dots, so that is one thing when you're using a texture you do want to be cautious of. So again, just covering all of the jars. I think you guys have seen me paint a time or two, so we'll just kind of skip right here and kind of move on to the next part, which really the next part is just more painting. I think I ended up doing 3 coats on these, but I just wanted to show you what that base coat looked like dried there, and then moving on to the second coat. And here's where I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna stick with my brush because I liked the coverage that I got with it versus the no brush strokes, because I really don't think it's gonna make a big difference in the end. So again, you're just gonna give them all a second coat and then assess them and determine whether you want to do a 3rd coat. In case I forgot to mention earlier, the type of Mod Podge that you want to use is a matte Mod Podge. I feel like that's going to give you the best look for your sea glass. So when you're getting your Mod Podge, just make sure that you have the matte, bare minimum satin, I guess, but I would stick with matte if I were you. Look at how beautiful these all turn out. I feel like they did turn out really good in the end. There was a few moments during this project I was like, I don't know how this is going to look, but I feel like this really is going to be a compliment to any type of nautical or beach or just a fresh feel that you want in your decor for summertime or any time of year that you use beachy decor. What do you guys think of this sea glass? Do you like this? Is this something that you would try? I had a lot of fun making it, and I really do think they turned out really beautiful. I've seen a lot of other DIYers find cutting boards at thrift stores, or you could easily take a jigsaw and cut a template out of like some wood or MDF board to get one. I found this at IKEA. It was just right around the $4 range, and I thought it would be super cute to do this with. So I'm just taking a piece of lemon scrapbook paper and tracing it out, and then I am going to use my glue stick to glue this onto the surface. I decided to not paint the back of my cutting board. I personally liked the look of the color of the wood kind of on the edges there, but you easily could paint this if you would want to. You could even do like this scrapbook paper on the front and then flip it over and do a different on the back, and that way you kind of get a 2-for-1 out of it. I do take some scissors. I actually switched to my little precision scissors here to get a little bit of a closer cut and trim pretty close to the edge. And then I'm going to take my emery board. You can use sandpaper or whatever you like to go along the edge to give it that really crisp, clear edge there. It gives it a very nice, clean look. And then, of course, since we put glue and paper onto the cutting board, we're not using this it's not food safe. You're just going to use it for decoration, obviously. And then I do poke the hole with the little pencil there and use my scissors. I take these little wooden tags that I bought a package of at Hobby Lobby. I just need one of them. I use my crocodile to poke a little hole into it there to put some twine through. I'll go ahead and link that crocodile down in my description box if you're interested in that. They are amazing. And then I just paint my little tag completely white here, and then I take, what is this, 7 or 8 beads that I put onto some twine also, and I'm going to wrap this through the hole of the top of the cutting board. That way it's going to create a cute little tag on here. So very carefully, to stop this from fraying, I am just going to use a little bit of glue and let it dry for a little bit. That way it's not hot. So definitely don't burn yourself doing this. And then I just kind of twist as I'm pulling that glue off. This kind of gives it just a little bit of a surface that you can stick through and not have it start to fray. And I'm just going to wrap this twine around the top. And then I do just go in and glue it down to secure it completely.
I found this cute little easy peasy lemon squeezy graphic on Cricut's Design Space, and so I just went ahead and cut that out, and I'm just putting that on. And then I am going to dry brush a little around the edge here with, I think this is my antique wax that I'm using going around. This is just going to kind of give it a little bit of an aged and weathered look. Very rarely do I go through a video where I don't distress something, so I feel like this is giving a little bit of a distressed look to this. And then I also take some white paint and I do dry brush that a little bit over my lemon graphic, as well as I dry brush it over the beads also, just to kind of give them a little bit of an aged look also. I don't know, I just thought it kind of looked good. It kind of made them pop a little bit on there, just kind of like they were something that had been hanging out for a really long time. I think this turned out so cute. I think that little tag looks darling on there in my hutch in my kitchen where I'm going to put all of my lemon stuff. I think this is going to be so cute and be the perfect little touch for a lemon kitchen. I had some wooden blocks that I had picked up at a yard sale, and I just gave them kind of a whitewash, and now I am just going over them and I am painting a faux ticking stripe to kind of match all of my other French farmhouse bee decor that I'm doing. And I just freehand this on here, so it does not have to be perfect. You can tell that I am not by any means able to paint straight lines, but it ends up looking okay in the end. I was a little skeptical, but I think it ends up looking okay. After I get all of those stripes painted on all of the sides of these little blocks here, I go in with some white paint on a little chip brush here, you can kind of see, and I just kind of distress that even more so it does look a little bit more faded. I have been asked by several people to give a little bit more thorough detail on how to print on tissue paper. So I am just taking a regular piece of copy paper and a regular piece of tissue paper. One side of the tissue paper kind of has a shiny sheen to it, and the other side is more of a dull, softer side. So I like to print with that shiny, slick side down to the paper, so that softer side is what is up, what goes through your printer. So I just take a corner of the tissue paper and move in a little bit on my paper, and then I am just placing tape down to tape the corners really well. After I get my first corner taped there, I will just take a pair of scissors and I am just going to trim the tissue paper down to fit on my paper so I can tape all of the edges down. Now I have seen a couple of different methods on how to tape your paper down. This is how I've had the most success. You can bring the tissue paper around the edges of your paper if you want, just as long as that paper fits through your printer and doesn't rip or anything, and this is how I've had the most success. After I cut it down, I just tape all of the corners down, making sure that my tape covers that entire corner so nothing's going to get caught in my printer. I then take a couple of pieces of tape and I tape along the edges. I don't want any air getting underneath that tissue paper and having it bubble up when it goes into the printer when it starts printing, and this helps prevent that from happening. So I will just feed this through my printer just like a normal piece of paper now. So whatever side you put your paper in, so you want the tissue paper where the ink comes through. Does that make sense? So I'm putting it so it will print on the tissue paper on the paper. So when I first printed mine, I printed it and it came out black, very dark. You can see here. And that wasn't really the French farmhouse look that I wanted. So I went ahead and redid my image in Canva, and I just printed these in Canva and did a gray color. You can see this one, the tissue paper did rip a little bit, but it did not rip any of the images, so it's still okay. So I'm just going to, you just cut around these. You can, I don't like to tear it because I don't want to risk tearing my image. So at this point, I just cut these off here until I get my little tissue paper, and you just take that off of the paper, throw your paper away, and you're left with these darling images printed on the tissue paper. Now, I've had several people tell me that they sell water pens to do this with, or specific things to do this with. I don't have those on hand. I'm not going to go buy one because it works just fine to use a little paintbrush and a little bit of water and do the method this way. If you have one of those brushes or want to invest in one of those, go for it. I don't see the need because I do this every once in a while and this totally works. But I just want you to know there is that tool out there, and every time I do this, everyone tells me about the pens. I am well aware that there are the pens.
this works just fine for me. So I just kind of go around my image a little bit with a little water on that brush, and then you're able to tear away that tissue paper, and it kind of gives you a little frayed edge. So when we decoupage this onto our blocks, you're not really going to see the edge of the tissue paper. So now I'm just taking some decoupage on my brush. I am using a matte decoupage, and I am just putting it all over my surface there very lightly. And I am just using, I'm not really sure what this little tool is called here. It came with my Cricut accessories, but I love it for this because then I don't get my fingers all messed up. And I just center it as best I can. And then using my finger, my dry finger, I'm just kind of pressing it around from the middle outwards to kind of have it not have as many wrinkles. And then once I get to that very outward edge, I use my brayer to kind of get that cemented down on there, if you will. And that helps smooth it all out. And then I go around the edges with a little bit of decoupage first. I let that dry, and then I will go over the entire image with a very, very, very thin coat of decoupage to help protect it and help it so it doesn't like rip or anything like that. Now do be careful when you're using your brayer on the tissue paper, because tissue paper is a little bit more sturdy than a napkin is, so it can handle a brayer a little better, but you do run the risk of tearing it, so just be very careful with that. Now the wonderful thing about this is when you first place it on there, you can kind of see the tissue paper outline, but as you do the decoupage around the edge and you do the decoupage over the top of it, literally that edge vanishes. Like, it looks like this is either printed on there. I love how this looks. I love the water slide decal paper. You could easily use that for this project, but I feel like this, you don't get that sheen like you do with the decal paper. I think this is such a wonderful trick. And look at how beautiful these little blocks turned out. I think they turned out so cute. I think they're that perfect touch of farmhouse and French country. And if you wanted to place images around all sides of them, you easily could do that as well. It would be fun to have some different themes on all the different sides of them as well.
Rolling pins are super easy to find at thrift stores, antique stores, in this case, vintage market days. In fact, I saw so many of them in different booths at vintage market days. I started taking a little bit of footage just to show you. It was almost comical that like almost every booth had some type of rolling pins. Now, whether you have some vintage ones or newer ones, you want to showcase them maybe in a collection, maybe you just have one that you want to showcase, I have a really fun idea for you that you can do with vintage rolling pins that's not going to compromise the integrity of your rolling pin. You don't have to use paint, but you can even change it up for different seasons and do it however you want. I really love this idea, and I hope that you guys like this too, because it is super fun.
Now, this is some fabric I picked up at Dollar Tree. I thought it was very perfect for a kitchen DIY. Kind of has like the farmer's market, the butcher. I just really thought it was perfect for this project. So I'm just putting a little slit in one edge of the fabric, and I'm going to tear this down. It tears pretty easily here, and the point of this is to have a really frayed edge. So I'm going to even kind of pull some extra little strings out and make sure that's a really like ratty-tatty frayed edge there. And that really gives that nice farmhouse aged look. And then I just kind of lay it up against my rolling pin, and you just decide how much of your rolling pin you want to have showing and how much fabric you want on there. I just kind of eyeballed that, and I just put a little slit in, and I'm going to tear this piece off and do the same thing with it, pulling away all of the extra threads and everything to give it a really frayed edge look. I love to have my mini heat press heated up when I'm working with fabric or ribbon, because it is so nice to be able to use this as an iron and get all of the wrinkles out. It really is a great tool to have. Now we need to make one more cut to our fabric here, so I'm just rolling the fabric around the rolling pin here, and I'm going to cut, leaving about an inch to overlap. And then the same process, I just tear this fabric and then I fray all of the edges. I'm going to use my Elmer's Purple School glue stick for this. It is non-toxic, so it is not going to harm your rolling pin in any way, either in residue or by adding harmful chemicals or anything into there. So I just placed that on my fabric. Now you could completely skip this step and just fold the fabric over on itself and not glue anything directly to the rolling pin. And I'm just going to take my heat press and iron this edge flat so it will lay flat on the rolling pin. And then I put my glue directly on the fabric here, on this edge of the fabric, so that way when I fold it over, then I've got a nice edge that's sealed onto my rolling pin. Putting this edge down and you're pulling it kind of taut, you just want to pay attention to the line of the fabric and make sure that it stays as straight as possible so it doesn't look all ski-wampus or anything. And I do take my heat press and I go over this edge. This helps if there's any wrinkles or any creases or anything that happen, it smooths those out really well. Now you could leave your rolling pin like this, but this is the fun part for me, is embellishing it. I love how mine turns out. Yours may look completely different than this, so hopefully this just helps give you some fun ideas. I just take some of the thicker Walmart twine and I wrap that around 3 or 4 times and then tie it off in a knot. And I took a little sprig of the Walmart boxwood, as well as this little piece of lavender that came from this year's Dollar Tree spring bundle. And I just placed those under the knot there. And then to get them to stay, I take my hot glue, and you're just going to place the littlest amount of hot glue, just enough to keep those in place. This is going onto the fabric. It's not going to harm the rolling pin in any way. I had made this little beaded chain and I thought, oh, maybe do I want to put it on here? This is me trying to hold it up to decide if I decide to put it on or not. It really went back and forth on this. I do end up adding it and I really do like how it looks, but it took me a minute to kind of imagine what it looked like. But I just essentially tie this around the knot so it's on there. I take some smaller twine and I just wrap that around my finger, maybe 10 times or so to make a little finger bow. I'll just take another piece of twine and wrap that around the middle to make a little bow here and just tie that off. And just those loops are going to make a cute bow to put on here. I know bows aren't everybody's thing. I think it looks really cute on here. It needed something extra, and in my mind, this was the perfect thing. So if you had a different idea, it would be fun to know what else you guys would try. So just a little bit of hot glue. I let that dry for a little bit before I place it down so the glue doesn't squirt out everywhere. And then I just kind of move my tassels or the tails of the bow there. I trim them up a little bit so they're not so crazy. And then here it is. Now, the fun thing about this is if you were to hang this, because it's got a hole in the handle, and kind of switch the direction of your bow, then those beads hang really cute if you were to display that like off a hanging rod or something. I'll show you what that looks like, but I think this looks really cute. I think the florals on the one side and the beads on the other really do kind of balance each other out. Here's a look at what it looks like hanging. What a fun way to display this if you have a hook or a shelf somewhere that you could hang things from. And imagine if you were to do this for some different seasons. It would be really easy to change this out because we're not compromising that rolling pin in any way. But imagine like a Christmas rolling pin or fall or something. I just think what a fun way to bring an actual kitchen item in and use it as decor, especially if you have some vintage ones or a collection. Kind of a fun, unique way to display these. What do you guys think of this one?
Now I want to do a beaded garland for my tier tray. If you guys watched me at all, you know I love to do beaded garlands. I think they really do add so much fun and like different textures into a tiered tray. So I like to, when I paint beads, I know there's so many different methods. This method is the one that I found works best for me to get the kind of coverage that I want, is I just put a little piece of tape in between the beads on the skewer so I can paint all the way around them. And I've had people tell me to put them like in a bowl with some water and swirl them around. I don't love I want a big heavy coverage on these because I want it to be really big, colorful. So that's why I decided to do that. So now I am just taking this little wood tag. This came from a pack of several from Hobby Lobby in their wood section, but the little hole wasn't big enough. So I'm just using my Crocodile, which is linked below down in my description box. I always have that linked under my favorite tools there, so you can check that out if you're interested in that. But I love being able to punch my own holes in wood, in tin, in thicker, things like that. It works awesome.
So I just paint that whatever color I decided there, and then I'm just using some Chalk Couture and this hot pink paint. This Chalk Couture little mini came from a set of mini little stencils here, and I thought that, or transfers I guess. Anyway, I thought the strawberry was really cute. Not necessarily what I would love for my saying, but I didn't really want to pull like my cutting machine out or anything, and every chance that I get to try this Chalk Couture, I'm loving it. So if you do want more information about that, that link is down in my description box. But guys, it's kind of like screen printing. Like, it's kind of therapeutic and relaxing here to kind of scrape all of that paint on, and then it's so satisfying. I can't tell you how many times that I have thought, I get to this point here and think, when I tear this up, this is going to be a disaster. And every single time it works out. Like, it's awesome. See, and I'll take it here and you just peel it back and it just reveals your design, and it's so cute. You could also do some like Dollar Tree stickers there. I know they had some cute popsicle stickers or something like that if you don't want to mess around with the Chalk Couture. But I just thought I would show you it because I think it's a lot of fun. Anyway, I painted, here's all the beads that I painted here, and I just decide which order I want them in, and this is how long I'm going to do my beaded garland. So in my mind, I have to kind of set them up so I know which color I'm grabbing next. And so I just thread all those through and tie it onto my tag there. I think I tied it onto the tag first, and then I fed these on here. And now I'm going to just make a tassel on the other end of it because I felt like it needed something on that end. So I start by wrapping the twine around my hand several times, and then I stick that paintbrush in, and that way I can get that little loop at the top. So I'll just tie a piece of twine around that. And then after I remove the paintbrush, I wrap that piece of twine around several times and tie that off. Now that that loop is there, I can feed the end of my beaded garland through that and then tie this tassel. It's not really a tassel yet, but I just tie that onto the end there. So that's how I get that fixed onto that. So now I have to make this a tassel. So I just stick my scissors through and then I cut that. And then what I do is I want all these little pieces to be even. So I will just hold that tassel and kind of fan it out, as you can see there. And then I will give that a trim a couple of times to make sure that all of those pieces are even and it's flat. Because a tassel that doesn't have all these pieces together is kind of like, some of them are longer and shorter. It doesn't look very neat, and I personally don't love that. So again, I just take my time and make sure that this is completely cut so all the pieces are even. And now what I like to do is just take some water. This is just water in this little thing. I got this at Dollar Tree, and I just spritz the tassel a few times, kind of comb it out with my fingers. This helps relax the twine because, as you know, your twine comes raveled up, and so your tassel automatically wants to do that. Like, it kind of wants to curve up or whatever. I've seen people flatten these with straight irons and everything, but if you don't have anything there with you, just a little bit of water, comb it out, and then let it dry. Does the trick, and it works perfect every time. I just love the colors in this. They're just summery and bright to me. I think they're darling. This is going to look so cute on my tiered tray. I'm so excited about this. The nautical section at Dollar Tree this year had these darling little signs, and it is so cute the way it is, but I wanted to personalize it a little bit. So I thought I would just try and get the words off of that little galvanized metal piece there. I tried to scrape it with the paint scraper. I tried rubbing alcohol. I tried acetone. Nothing made those even budged the slightest. So I had this idea that I would just unscrew it off and I would turn it over and use the back part of this metal piece to put my saying on. The only problem with that is I realized that this was glued down very well. And when I took it off, I'm like, oh, the sign, it still has the little sign on there printed on it. But anyway, the glue on the back of it was too hard to get off, and I'd scratched it really bad. So I just decided to paint over it with kind of a corresponding blue color and just screw that back on. And that's how I got my blank surface here. So just beware if you want to change this up a little bit. You probably could save yourself a lot of hassle just painting over it and not even unscrewing it. There was a lot of cute cutouts in the nautical line this year also, and I thought this lighthouse was really cute, and it took me a little while to kind of decide what to do with it, but I'm just taking some little Jenga blocks or the tumbling tower blocks, and I'm just going to glue those onto the base of this, and then it fits perfectly to glue onto the top of this sign. Now, I used my Hippo water slide decal paper, and I did just print on there. It says, "Let your light shine." I thought that would be super cute for the little lighthouse there. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about this water slide decal paper, I'll leave a link to a video where I explain a little bit more about it and how to use it. Basically, it's just like paper that goes through your printer that you print on. You spray it with some clear coat, let that dry, and then when you put it in water, it activates the kind of glue that's behind the clear portion here. And so when you slide it off the backing and place it onto your surface, it kind of acts almost like a decoupage type of consistency on the back of it, a little like goopy, if that makes sense.
chance, but not overly. But that's what helps it adhere to the surface. And then you just pat it down with a paper towel. So this is perfect if you don't want to get out your cutting machine or you don't have one. It's great for projects like this. I think this turns out so cute. It's fairly large in stature with that tall lighthouse on that base there. I think it turned out absolutely darling and perfect for a beach theme. It's been a little while since I've made a riser, so I'm kind of excited to show this to you guys. If you're new here, I love to make risers. I make them all year long, and they're so fun to use in your decor. I have so many different ideas. I'll link some videos down in my description box if you want to see those. But I love that Dollar Tree has these little containers, and they have these little scalloped edge on the lid. I've made some of the bigger ones, but this is the first time I've seen these little mini containers. So I'm just taking a candle holder. You can use one that you have at home. You could use a wood one. You could use Hobby Lobby also sells candle holders like this. They're like $1 more or something than Dollar Tree when you get them on a discount. But I'm just going to paint both of these the same color so they match. So I'm just using some white chalk paint. And you guys look at these adorable little hands down here. This is my little boy that came down as I was making this and he wanted to help. And I thought, well, how can I say no to that? So his paintings, this just shows you don't have to be perfect with this. But I let him paint both sides of it. At first I thought, oh, I'll have him do the inside. And then I was like, well, he did a pretty good job. So I do end up letting him paint when I turn it over on the surface that will actually show. But of course, on the bottom, it's not going to show that much because you're going to glue it onto the candle holder. So I'm just showing you here, he flipped it over and started doing that. And I think he did such a great job. And I just love that his cute little hands are here forever in this cute little video making this riser. And he'll remember making this. So that is kind of fun. You get to watch us do a little tag team here. So he's drawing the one piece while I'm painting the riser, and then we switch here in just a second. But it does take a few coats, maybe 3 coats of paint to get the coverage that you like, maybe even 4 depending on what kind of chalk paint you're using. So now I want this to really adhere. I don't want this to like fall apart or anything. I want it to be pretty sturdy. So I'm using some E6000 intermittently kind of around the edge of that candle holder. I'll even take a craft stick. I don't want this coming over the edge. I want it to look as clean as possible. So I'm kind of pushing it up and over onto the inside where that you won't see that portion because the container top is going to be glued to that. And then I'm just kind of spreading it out just a little bit. But I want to make sure I leave some of the area on the surface to put some hot glue because you're going to want that immediate hold. Now, you don't have to do the hot glue if you don't want to. You don't have to have that immediate hold if you're going to let it dry overnight. If you're impatient like I am, hot glue is your best friend. So I'm just going in the little areas I left open because you don't want to glue the glue. You don't want those 2 glues to mix because you will not get the type of hold that you're looking for. Now on a piece like this, it probably wouldn't matter so much because it's not like this is going to hang on a wall or anything, but just keep that in mind when you're doing that. I see a lot of people like put the hot glue right on top of the E6000 and that compromises the bond that you're going to get. So just be careful with that. So I'm going around cleaning it up because I don't want any of that glue showing. So I'm just doing my best to clean that up with that stick and my fingernail. Now, I love to distress things. You don't want to sand this because you're going to reveal the red that's underneath there. So I'm taking some mineral chalk paint, even like a cashew, an elephant color, some antiquing wax. I just kind of wanted to go really light on the distressing. But the reason I wanted to do it is because I feel like it really makes those scallops around that container lid really show up. You can see the detail in them. So it kind of gives them a little bit more definition. And if you look at pieces that you buy like in the store and things like that, a lot of them have a little bit of distressing or some type of definition on the edges of pieces like that. So I really feel that's what's going to elevate your piece to the next level. I went even over the little ridges in the candlestick there. You can even go over the top of it with some more white paint if you feel like you get it a little heavy and lighten it up a bit. But here's the finished project, and I think it is beautiful. This is going to be, I mean, of course you can use this all year round. It's not just Christmas, but these containers typically only come out at Christmas time, so that's why I'm putting it right here in this video. But I love this, and I intend to use this all over. And you get 2 lids, so you technically can make 2 projects. You just have to have another base for it. What do you guys think of this one? And are you fans of the risers? Because I have so many more new ideas to do with risers. I was recently at a little fundraising yard sale for my friend. Her daughter's in band, and so they were doing this to raise some money. And she was like, hey, come here, I have this package for you. Somebody had donated a package of all these little wood pieces, and she's like, I have them for you. I kept them. I knew you would want them. So I'm excited to use this. I paid just a couple of dollars for this bag of a bunch of wood slices. And so that's what I'm using for the base of this. And this is just a calendar page from this year's Dollar Tree, one of their farmhouse Dollar Tree calendars.
calendars, and I thought this design was beautiful. I'm unfortunately not going to use the flowers around the edge, but that little BU, I just think that's so cute. And so it's going to go perfect with my bee theme of some things I'm doing today. So I'm just going to take my wood slice. I used my finger to kind of mark out where I want to cut my design. I centered it on the piece. And now on the edge of this, I'm just putting some antiquing wax. You could even use like a green color of paint, would be super cute with it. But I just decided on the sides and the back that it just needed something to look a little bit more finished. Now I'm just going to go cut out. I cut a little bit. I leave a little room between where I ran my finger on the edge of the wood slice, just because I want to be able to have a little bit of wiggle room if I don't cut exactly right or something. And I do like to sand off the edge, and so that gives me enough space to be able to do that. So we're just using some Mod Podge on this. I'm just putting this down. Now this side of the wood is really grainy and it's got a lot of texture to it, which is great, but you just want to make sure when you're working with that you get your Mod Podge in all the little areas there, the little nooks and crannies, if you will. And then I'm just placing this down here, and I let the Mod Podge completely dry, and then I place my design on here, and I'm just going over it with my little mini heat press. Again, I picked these up on Amazon, like $20, $25-ish. But I actually use the heck out of this thing, especially when I'm working with ribbons. So to kind of, it's just like a nice little iron to use. So a lot of purposes for these little mini heat presses. I'll just leave a link in my description box if you want to check those out. But I'm just slowly going over all of this, making sure that it will heat up that Mod Podge and it will help that calendar page stay with no wrinkles whatsoever. Now to get the edge off, I just sand with my fingernail file, and it gives it a nice crisp edge to it. And then to seal it, I just go over again with some Mod Podge. Now when I sanded, it left a little bit of the exposed wood, so I'm just going back over with some antiquing wax to cover that, to make sure that you don't see that natural wood color, that it's kind of the stained piece. It just makes it look nice and high end. I decided to go over the edges a little bit more with the leftover antiquing wax for a little bit of a distressing. You guys know I love that, so if that's not your thing, definitely skip that. But look at how cute this looks. You can really see that wood detail when I went over it with the antiquing wax. It picks up all of that texture from the wood. This would be perfect for a tiered tray, just to set out with some decor. I mean, the possibilities are endless with the different seasons of different things you would want to do. So this is a great technique to have kind of in your arsenal of things to make little decor pieces. I found these little wood slices in the wedding section at Hobby Lobby, and I thought they would be fun to make some little watermelon slices. I also thought it would be fun to use these as coasters as well for your backyard barbecue. So I do just take each of them and I go around and paint the green rind all along the outside of each one. For the variation in the watermelon rind, I do go in and put a little bit of a light green ring all around each of these. And then after I'm done on getting that light green ring done, I go in with my hot pink and do the centers. I'm just using my dotting tool to do the little seeds on each of these. So how I do the seeds is I put my dotting tool, I make kind of a bigger circle at the top, and then I kind of drag it down to make the shape of the watermelon seed. So I kind of will move it around and then just do a little thin line going down to make that kind of oblong shape of the seed. And I just do however many you feel you want to do. You can do a pattern, you can do them random, you can do few, many, however you want to do the seeds, that's kind of up to you. But I do go in with some Mod Podge and completely cover each of these.
That way it will protect the paint, and when you're using cups on them as coasters, then it's going to kind of protect the wood as well. So what do you guys think of these? think they turned out really cute. I think they're super fun, super creative. I think it would be the perfect addition to your backyard barbecue, or even just to set up as a decoration around. It might be kind of fun to drill a little hole through these somehow and do them like on a banner. I don't know. I think they turned out really cute. If you can use a glue gun, you can totally do this project. It's so easy. So I have this charger plate. Now I got this at Hobby Lobby because I like the designs on theirs a little bit more, and I have a hard time finding just the plain white ones at my Dollar Tree. So if you can find them at Dollar Tree, you can definitely use that. But I am just going to take this little shell. This was hanging with a little twine piece that I cut off of the top, and I'm just going to glue some of these cubes onto the back of it. I just buy these cubes in the craft section at Dollar Tree. You could easily use some Gorilla Glue to give a better hold if you would like to. Sometimes on these chargers, I like to do a little bit of hot glue because you can kind of peel them off and change the embellishment for the different seasons. So I just placed the hot glue on each of those little cubes there, and then I just center this up. When I first placed it down, I realized that my charger wasn't quite straight, and so you have a little bit of wiggle room there, but that is it. You have this like on a shelf or in a china hut or something, and it totally gives you that coastal beachy vibe. Such a cute decoration, and it's so simple, and literally it took me less than 2 minutes to make this. So fun. I encourage you to take a look at your clearance section at your local home decor store, or garage sales, yard sales, or even thrift stores at the section where they have their pictures, because you'll find silly pictures that maybe you would never put in your home, but they have a great shape to them. And that's exactly what I'm using here. And I have these little candlesticks that I got at Hobby Lobby. If I have a link to them on Amazon, I'll put that down below, but that's going to be the feet here. So I completely intend on painting over that design. I don't really need a girl that's blowing bubble gum picture, but you know, it works for the shape. And honestly, this particular riser is the one I think I use the most in my house. So I just give it a complete coat of white paint, even over the edges there, you can see, and then I will paint the feet as well. Obviously, whatever color you're going to want to paint yours, you're going to choose that. I just thought that the neutral white would look really good. And like I say, this ended up being one that I use more often than any of the other risers. I've had this one the longest, but I love this one and I use it all the time. Just make sure when you're painting the feet on this, or the legs, whatever you want to call it. They're so tall, I want to call them legs, but just make sure you get every angle, because when this is set up in your home, you will be able to see all sides of those feet. I just love how this one turns out. It went from a silly little picture to something that I use all the time in my home. So again, I just encourage you to think outside the box, look for a shape rather than what the picture is on the front or something like that. What do you guys think of this one? I saw this little candle votive at Dollar Tree, and it had some little bees on it, and I thought it would be perfect to use for this bee video, but it did have kind of a chip in the side of it, and so I wanted to cover that up. I do love the yellow color. It is beautiful. You could easily leave it, but I just want you to know that you can change the color of anything to match your decor or your themes, and that's okay. I know sometimes I get a couple comments of, oh, it was so beautiful, why did you paint over it? I just want you to not be afraid of changing things if it's not your taste or your style. So I'm just giving this a coat of white paint first as a base, and then I'm going back in with a lavender color. I love the color of lavender with French country themes and with like the bees kind of, I mean, when I think of bees, and we've had beehives before, and we planted lavender around for them to fly through and everything. And I just love the contrast of the two. So that's why I chose the lavender color. I am just dry brushing around that raised detail and all around with some white chalk paint to kind of make that bee detail show up and have it look a little distressed. And if you get a little heavy on one spot, just go back in with your original base color and kind of tone that white down if you get a little heavy on some spots. And I thought it would be cute to just stick a little teeny round topiary ball on top of this. Just bring a little greenery in, and those cute little bees just pop on there. And I think this is just such a cute little touch of bee and a little bit of spring and everything. I think it turned out really cute. If you guys have watched me, you know that anytime I do tiered tray decor, I always love to incorporate a beaded garland somehow. I just love them, and I love coming up with different ways to kind of do different variations. Now, I'm doing some painted beads for this garland, so all I'm doing is I just took a barbecue skewer and I just taped in between each of the beads so I can paint them easily there. I found this is one of the better ways to get the coverage that I like and to be able to get all around the tops and bottoms without completely getting my hands all messy. Now, I did need to change the paint color that I had a little bit there. I wanted it to be a little darker. So you can always lighten or brighten or darken paint by adding, some white to it. I added a little bit of like charcoal gray to this to kind of get the desired color that I wanted. But you can see how easy those beads are once they dry. You just slide them right off the barbecue skewer. And I'm just placing them in the order that I want to make sure I have enough beads for the length of garland that I want to do. This is also the point that my 10-year-old daughter came downstairs and goes, "Oh, Mom, are you doing a Christmas video?" No, it's cherries, but it works, I promise. It does look very Christmassy though. So I have this round that came from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to paint that same color of green because I want green to really be an accent color with the red for the cherries. So I'm just painting the rim of this little round here, and after it dries fully, I'm just going to take some painter's tape around the edge so that way I don't have any like thing that goes over the edge, because I'm going to paint the flat portions of this white. Hopefully this makes sense. So this kind of stops any paint from dripping down onto the sides there. And I have done it where I painted the flat surfaces first and then the edge, and that did not work out well for me. So this actually worked out pretty good. Now I printed this design on tissue paper, and I have a full tutorial on how to print on tissue paper. I'll leave the link down in my description box. But this is a graphic that I made on Canva, and I can leave a link to it down in my description box for you. So if you would like to use it as well, you are more than welcome to. I thought this saying was super cute, just the pretty please with a cherry on top, because how many times have we said that in our lifetime when we really want something really bad? And I thought it would just be perfect for this little tiered tray. After I use the water to kind of get my little design out, I am just going to put a very light coat of Mod Podge on here. And then I have this little Cricut tool. It's from like stamp collecting or something. I'm sure you can find them in any office supply store. And I just use that to place down my tissue paper, and I start in the middle, and I just very easily work my finger. This is very sped up, so it's kind of a slow process, but trust me, take your time, and it will look like this is like printed onto your wood, your project. It doesn't look like it's glued on at all. After it dries completely, you can go over it with some Mod Podge to seal it and make sure those edges are very sealed. So now comes the process of just attaching your beads to this little medallion that we've made here. So I just feed through the twine on there, and you can do this in any manner or fashion that you want to. I just pulled it through and tied it off there. And then I like to have a little bit of a tassel. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It just depends on how it's going to be. But just a quick overview on how I do a tassel. I just wrap it around 10 to 15 times around my hand, so you end up with a big loop of twine. And then I like to put something through it. I'm just using, as you can see, a paintbrush. This is going to create that little loop at the top of your tassel, and then you just tie another piece of twine below that paintbrush and wrap it around another like 5 to 10 times to kind of create that little bundle of twine there, and then I just tie it off. And now you just go ahead and I cut the loops, and then I get them all the same length there with my hand and cut them as close as I can to be straight. Now the trick that I love is I take a little bit of water and spray it and kind of comb it out, and you can see that there are some little stinkers there that were not cut to the same length. So you can really get your idea of how close to level you are there. And that water helps to relax the twine so it dries nice and flat, and it doesn't go like completely ski-wampus like most of the twine tassels do. So that's a fun little trick there. And I just got that little spritz bottle just at Dollar Tree. It comes in like a 2-pack there. I just tie this onto the end of my beads, and then I use just a little bit of hot glue to secure that knot, and that's it. There we go. I think this turns out so cute. I love it, and it does not look Christmassy, right? I guess maybe the colors do, but it will all work when everything is together. But I love how this turns out, and I'm very pleased with it.
I really wanted to find some type of plant or greenery to bring into my tiered tray, and I loved the look of this white little planter box here with a little bit of greenery and the purple flowers, and so that's kind of what I'm going for here. I'm taking one of these drawer boxes, and if you didn't see my Dollar Tree haul video a couple of days ago, they're back at Dollar Tree, and I mean, like, there was hundreds, I felt like, at my Dollar Tree. So go grab them, have them in your stash, because they are the best things to craft with. So I just gave it a white coat of chalk paint. I actually took a couple of them, and I'm just using a calendar square off of the back here from Dollar Tree. You could use any type of scrapbook paper, or you could even use the part of the drawer that doesn't have the little hole cut out. I just am using that because I liked the size of it a little bit better for my tiered tray, and I thought this little honey design, because it was another honey design from the calendar this year from Dollar Tree, would be perfect to put over that little heart shape so you wouldn't be able to see it. So again, just my trusty purple school glue. This school glue is amazing. I love it. The purple glue is the one I have the most success with. I don't have peeling. It holds up for years. I've had very much success. You guys, if you've watched me, you know I love this stuff. So I'm just placing it down and centering it, and I actually do pull out my brayer and I go over it in each direction 5 or 6 times just to make sure that it gets a really good bond to the wood surface there. Now, I really did kind of like the rustic look on the original, my inspiration piece, and so I got some antiquing wax, and I'm just using that on just one of these little stencil brushes. I wiped the majority of it off on my little baby wipe, and I'm just going back and forth, careful not to go over the area that I've already gone over, to kind of give it a wood grain type look, just a rustic, like it's just kind of a chippy look. Now, I've had a lot of questions recently about antiquing wax. I have a lot of the Waverly antiquing wax that you used to be able to get at Walmart left in my stash. I bought a bunch of it when I knew it was kind of going away. So I've had questions because you can't really find that anymore. At the craft stores, you'll find the Folk Art brand, which is actually the same company as Waverly. So it's very similar. There's also some different types on Amazon. You just want to make sure, if you're using it in the crafting way like I'm using it here, that it's a water-based antiquing wax, and that way you're going to get all of the benefits, that it's going to dry quickly. It's not going to take a long time to dry. It doesn't smudge as easily. It's really great to work with. You can see there that I'm kind of showing you that it dries almost instantly, depending on how thick you put it on. Now I'm taking a couple little sprigs of Dollar Tree greenery here. These are just some leftover sprigs I had from other projects that I've kind of snipped some out of. So I used a couple of them to make it look pretty full, and I'm just arranging them in the cute little box here. And I really loved the purple and the yellow look, but doesn't this look so cute? It's going to add that perfect little touch of greenery to the tiered tray, and I think this little bee design is one of the cutest that Dollar Tree calendars have had, and I think that it's going to be absolutely perfect. I'm excited to show you everything together.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this compilation mega video. If you have made it this far, I would love if you would consider hitting that subscribe button and becoming a member of our crafting community. If you did like any of today's projects, remember to hit that thumbs up. But again, have such a wonderful day and happy crafting. If you liked the video that you just saw and you want to keep crafting together, here's another video that you might enjoy. And as always, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.